Winter doesn't cancel sociability. It edits it. A city that keeps streets walkable also keeps small commerce alive at ankle height. Coffee windows, food carts, curbside cafes in hats, weekend markets where crates steam a little in the cold. The trick is to make warmth without slickness, bustle without blockage, and charm without hazards. When these corners behave, pedestrians get light, food, and friendliness. Vendors get a day's dignity. And the sidewalk keeps right on being a sidewalk. The first rule is that heat and water are cousins you must introduce formally. Outdoor heaters, propane mushrooms, infrared bars, tidy electric towers must sit on dry, textured ground, not above a snow pile that will melt into mischief. A small rubber mat beneath the heater's footprint becomes a treaty. Drips stop here, not on the walkway. Cables and hoses learn winter manners. 2. They are routed along the building face, under a cord cover with a grit top, never across the desire path. A single cup of sand on the cover turns a potential toe stub into a dull patch that disappears in use. Curbside cafes stage their furniture as if snow were a polite guest who still needs room. Tables tuck against the facade. Chairs line up with their backs to the wind. The fence that marks the cafe sits a hand's breadth inside the curb, leaving a proper pedestrian lane and space for the narrow berm the street plow will later deliver. Where the cafe lives on a platform, the platform's edge gets a tiny bevel and a strip of grit so foot meets certainty, not a surprise step. A push broom lives by the host to stand. In winter, tables are cleared less often than the 2 square meters where servers pivot. Menu items change texture as much as taste. Powdered sugar is demoted on windy days. Soups are promoted and carried with lids to keep the slosh from becoming a path's gloss. Spill kits are winter grade. Absorbent granules for olive oil mishaps, a small squeegee for the sheen that escape a tray, paper towels that appear quickly and vanish into a sealed bin. Staff learn the rule of the 3-minute ring. If a ring of moisture forms around a table's foot, it is wiped now, not later. The reward is a cafe that seems to stay dry by good luck. Food carts and trucks write a tiny opera of order. Their service window pads are brushed first and often. A rubber mat lives under the customer line so boots leave with soup, not with shine. Propane cylinders sit on small platforms and are checked for weeping frost that would warn of slipping into a glaze. Carts orient their downspout. Yes, even a cart's awning has a drip, to aim at a small stone bed in a planter or into a tray, not into traffic. Every cart keeps a tablespoon of sand within reach. Every cart owner learns to dust the spot where a customer's heel will pivot after the first sip. Markets borrow winter from both city and farm. A lane is kept clear and consistent through the stalls. Vendor lines set back from that lane leave a braided space, one for browsing feet, one for through traffic. Trash barrels sit on sacrificial mats with low lips so their small drips don't mark a later skate. Booths manage their microclimate politely. A gentle radiant heater aimed at torsos, not at snow. Tarps clip just high enough that melt slides into a waiting gutter strip, not onto the world. The market's map includes snow pockets where ploughed mounds are welcome to live out the week. Shaped low and long along the outer curb so sightlines stay honest, beverage stalls discover a physics that cafes have known forever. Steam condenses faster than manners. A barista with a towel and a smile is the city's winter concierge. Wipe the counter lip, then the drip line below it. Wring the towel into a bucket with a pinch of de-icer so kindness doesn't reappear as a film. Hand off lids already fitted to hot cups. Prevent the convivial splash. A small sign, "Secure lids here," reminds mittened hands that pausing reduces puddles. The sign works better when placed on a mat, not on gloss. Grease is winter's stealth villain. A single French fry stumble can paint a square foot that chemistries struggle to cure. Vendors carry an emergency grit, crushed stone fines in a coffee tin, and a habit. If it spills, dust immediately, then page the market steward to swap in a fresh mat. The steward's map includes a grease exile, a tray-lined bin off to the side where problem mats live until the event ends. You don't fight slick with shovels. You smother it and quarantine it. Paths through these lively corners stay honest because someone is always looking down the block with a walker's eyes. The cafe manager remembers the curb cut. The cart owner remembers the bus pad. The market steward remembers the zebra. Doorways through windrows are cut the moment the plough passes, not an hour later when the first customer has already gone home damp. The best corners agree that strollers, canes, and chairs are not special traffic. They are the standard. You can feel that standard underfoot, a dry stripe from the rack to the window, a brushed tactile plate, a clean crescent around the APS post. Lighting is both atmosphere and legibility. Warm bulbs under awnings make wet look like wet, not shadow. String lights banish the tunnel feeling without shouting at eyes. A clamp lamp above a menu board earns its keep when it also gilds the ground just enough that black ice can be seen by a distracted appetite. In gusty canyons, fixtures wear short leashes and quiet housing so they don't vibrato into the evening. Deliveries thread these spaces quietly. A hand truck route is brushed and dusted before the first crate leaves the van. A rubber mat sits where the truck bumps over the sill so the jolt doesn't scatter items or polish a patch. When a vendor uses a water jug, the jug stands in a tray. When a kettle is filled, a microfiber cloth follows to tidy the drip. The rule is dullness. Keep the visible world mildly boring so the food can be the drama. Wasteways must be winterproofed or they'll rewrite the sidewalk into a lesson no one ordered. Grey water does not cross the public path. It travels in a covered container to a drain indoors. Trash bags are cinched tight. Bins roll to the curb along the building side, not across the desire path. A spill gets cones for a minute and a mat forever. Cones are punctuation, not literature. Etiquette spreads by example. A laminated card near the cafe door reads, "Brush first, sprinkle second." Keep the curb cut wide. Don't pile in the ramp's fan. Wipe drips. Dust gloss. Leave a door through the berm after every plough pass. The market posts a morning message to vendors. Wind from the west. Tie tarps on the east edge. Heaters on mats. Lids on liquids. Grit tins at the counter. None of this is punitive. It's choreography that has learned to hum along with appetite. Neighborhood groups become winter ushers for commerce. Someone adopts the storm drain beside the pastry line. Someone widens the crossing door when the noon rush arrives. Someone texts the city when a downspout starts misbehaving over the falafel stand. A vendor comps a coffee for a broom pass. A broom pass comps the vendor a little goodwill. The currency is small, the value large. By late afternoon, these corners wear a particular look of competence. The ground is dull where feet pause, textured where they pivot, brushed where they pass. Piles are low and logical. Cords lie under covers with grit. Heaters glow over mats. The curb-cut fan is open to its edges. The zebra stripes are visible, and a neat door cuts through the berm. People queue without blocking. Strollers glide. Canes tap with confidence. Laughter rises into the blue light and doesn't compete with a cautionary tone from the ground. The lesson of winter commerce is modest. Serve warmth without exporting risk. Put heat on mats, lids on liquids, grit under where heels turn, and paths where minds can wander without ankles paying for it. When the cafe, the cart, and the market join the city's winter manners, the result is deliciously ordinary. You buy something hot, you walk away safely, you remember the flavor, and you forget the floor. A winter city stays kind when help can find you on foot. Sirens carry meaning, but in snow their promise depends on small, quiet preparations, a hydrant that isn't wearing a hat, a curb cut you don't have to argue with, a house number that reads like a sentence instead of a riddle. Paramedics, firefighters, home care nurses, postal carriers of medicine, winter tests all their paths. Walkability, here, is not just comfort. It's time. Hydrants are winter's little lighthouses. They ask for a simple apron, 3 feet in every direction, a path from curb to cap, and a little corridor to the street plow's lane so a hose does not have to learn to climb. Reflective whiskers, slender rods that rise above the berm, help crews see red when the world is white. The work is communal. Cities clear the first ring. Neighbors widen it without a speech. A bright shovel bite around the caps becomes a ritual after each storm. Chip, brush, glance upward. No dripping icicles from the eave above that might choose drama at the wrong moment. A hydrant saved a block last summer. The block returns the favor in January. House numbers are the city's winter typography. The best ones glow, the second best ones contrast. The worst are decorative ghosts. A calm practice keeps them readable. Brush the plaque when you brush the stoop. Place a small, warm bulb in the vestibule so glass doesn't fog the view. Tape an emergency number inside the window for the night when the porch light naps. Apartment buildings paint their numerals at eye height on the jamb as well as above the door. Corner buildings repeat numbers on the side that faces the cross street. Snow muffles direction, and redundancy feels like kindness at 2 in the morning. Curb cuts near critical doors, clinics, pharmacies, senior residences become winter's small promises. They are kept open to their edges, not only wide enough for a single wheel. The door through the windrow is cut where people truly cross, not where a map thinks they should. Tactile plates are brushed so a cane can sing. The APS button wears a dry crescent. A spoon of grit lives on the upwind lip where drift teeth grow. Inside, a vestibule runner lies continuous from outer threshold to inner. Wheels do not swallow seams at the moment. Decisions must be simple. Home care routes are the city's kindness delivered in plain clothes. A nurse with a bag and a list moves between stoops like a quiet envoy. The block welcomes them with minor miracles. A narrow shoveled braid from sidewalk to door. A small landing brushed on each step. A rail wiped of frost. A doorbell kept clear of ice. If the patient's house is vacant in daylight, a neighbor touches up the path at dusk so the night visit doesn't spend minutes on needless chipping. The measure is modest. Time saved now becomes breath saved later. Fire stairs and standpipe doors in mixed-use buildings have their own winter etiquette. The outside exit that nobody uses at noon becomes the only honest choice at midnight. So the alley receives respect. No snow stored against the crash bar. No glossy patch where a freezer fan exhales and condenses. No cords or sandwich boards living where a line of people might need to stand in boots. A push broom hangs on a hook by the back door. A small bin of grits sits beside the alarm panel. Someone walks the exit route during the lull even when the lobby looks perfect. Intersections near hospitals, clinics, and dialysis centers are winter's tiny treaties between wheels and fate. Street plows feather their berms early at these corners. Crossing teams arrive with trenching spades to cut generous doors immediately. Bus pads at hospital campuses receive double visits. First to open the pad, second to widen it for a chair to turn without choreography. After the morning rush, a nurse on break does what winter cities quietly rely on. A quick broom across a tactile plate, a glance at the APS crescent, a pinch of sand on the little shine near the ramp. These are not asks in a job description. They are the trades of a neighborhood that knows where its breath sits. Bridges, underpasses, and cut-throughs are the shortcuts emergency crews know too well. Footbridges frost first and thaw last. Their recipes are simple. Pre-wet before the storm, broom in the lull, grit at expansion joints, and bins at either end where anyone can take a scoop. Underpasses gather cold like a habit. Condensate drips from concrete ribs onto the exact line walkers prefer. The fix is modest. A squeegee pass after the bus surge. A shallow channel nudged toward a drain. A little do not pass under icicles flag for the hour a crew is clearing a ledge above. Choosing your avalanche beats being surprised by it. Addressing isn't only numbers. It's entrances. In dense blocks, deliveries, and stretches risk guessing which door is the right door. Winter increases the penalty for guessing wrong. The cure is cheap clarity. A small A, B, C overside doors. A laminated entrance here arrow at eye level. A path to the right door that looks inevitable. Brushed, lit, dull underfoot. When renovations move the entrance for a week. A sign that includes the words cleared path is better than any arrow alone. Use west door, cleared path via maple. The word cleared is winter's. Hospitality hydrant standpipes and FDCs. Fire. Department connections. On building fronts deserve. The same apron as hydrants. Clear to the caps. Visible. Reachable without acrobatics. Sidewalk cafes in winter remember to leave these faces UN decorated. Heaters and screens sit elsewhere. A strip of grit from curb to FDC writes the storyline crews need when a night is loud and the street glazed. Dispatchers and field crews share a winter language that sounds like housework more than urgency. Curb cut at 12th and Pine, door. Reopened. Hydrant at 44 Birch, apron. Cleared. North Ear ramp, wiped and dusted. A city that speaks. Like this all winter does not need to shout in March. The meters on calm tell the story. Fewer. Slips for crews carrying. Fewer delays at curb cuts. Fewer loud surprises from drips that grew into daggers. Power outages wrap snow in another layer. Dark intersections need a pedestrian plan as much as a traffic one. Temporary beacons, lanterns at crossings, cones that draw a dry channel across slush. These small inventions keep feet from negotiating with bumpers in the dim. Building lobbies become neighborhood vestibules. Their mats and mops take on extra shifts. Their staff become ushers to safe ground. Even a thermos of hot water behind a front desk becomes public infrastructure when a neighbor's breath is thin and a cup helps. Not every emergency comes with lights. A person with a late pregnancy waddle and a misbehaving sidewalk. A senior with a wheeled tote that could use two hands except one is guarding a hat. A kid with asthma who walks faster when the ground is honest. Walkable help means designing for these micro-emergencies all day. Keep curb cuts wide, keep bus pads dull, keep the zebra visible, keep a dry stripe to the clinic door. Doing so during ordinary hours leaves fewer heroic moments for the night. Rescue routes for snowplows are rescue routes for everyone. A city map that layers fire response times with winter trouble spots, north-facing slopes, drift alleys, shaded bridges, becomes a choreography of first passes. Open this corridor by 6. Return for the drains at 10. Widen the bus pads before noon. Property owners along those corridors learn their role by habit. Keep the windrow doors generous. Never stage bins in the desire path. Adopt the drains like godchildren. A corridor is just a string of small courtesies performed in sequence. Ambulance crews move heavier objects than most pedestrians. Stretchers, oxygen, people. Their routes need turning room without drama. Landscaping stones that look benign in July become plough shadow traps in January. A planter parked too near a ramp becomes a pivot that steals time. The fix is millimeters and feet. Push planters back. Bevel platform edges. Sweep the braid from curb to door 2 shovels wide. When a stretcher rolls without complaint, everyone's blood pressure thanks the ground. The culture that supports emergency access is quiet and specific. Flyers do not yell. They coach. Hydrant apron. 3 feet curb to door. 2 shovels wide. House numbers. Brushed and lit. Keep APS buttons clear. Cut windrow doors where feet actually cross. Social posts say we reopened the crossing at Oak, not someone should. Kids earn extra credit for adopt a hydrant photos. Teens learn to spot black ice by sound, not just shine. These rituals make an ambulance's path a civic object, not a municipal secret. By late afternoon on a well-mannered winter day, the signs are subtle, hydrants with neat collars. House numbers that read at a glance. Clinic ramps that feel inevitable. Crosswalk doors cut to generous widths. Drains murmuring. Vestibules dull and welcoming. You don't notice crews. You notice that people carrying things aren't forced to balance tricks. Help can walk where it needs to. The city looks ordinary, which, in the business of emergencies, is a kind of quiet miracle. The lesson of emergency access is that speed is built long before sirens. Clear the hydrant, read the number, open the door through the berm, brush the bumps, wipe the rail, dull the shine. Keep the map in inches, not only in lanes. Then winter remains a season, not a sentence, and when help arrives, it will find ground that already agrees to be helpful. Winter makes a simple ask, friction, but the way we answer can either help the city or bruise it. Salts keep ankles upright, yet their leftovers wander into soils and streams. Sands bring texture, yet spring finds them crouched in gutters like stubborn ghosts. A walkable city learns to give just enough help to each square foot. And no more, choosing chemistry as if it were seasoning, sparingly, purposefully, and with respect for whoever drinks downstream. Temperature is the first teacher. Sodium chloride, rock salt, Works best near freezing, loses spirit below -7 degrees Celsius 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and stops being persuasive in real cold. Calcium chloride works lower, pulls water from air, useful, but messy, and leaves surfaces damp longer. Magnesium chloride whispers at low temps and is gentler to concrete but can stay tacky. Potassium acetate and CMA, calcium magnesium acetate, treat infrastructure kindly and pores kindly, though budgets raise an eyebrow. Brines, salt dissolved ahead of time and sprayed thin, prevent bonds before they form, using less material than tossing crystals at a crisis. The rule is gentle. Choose the product for the day you have, not the shelf you own. Application is choreography, not dump truck. Spreaders are calibrated like instruments. Operators read pavement, not just air. A teaspoon per square meter can break a bond that a handful would only waste. Pre-wetting rock salt, moistening it so it sticks to pavement instead of bouncing into tree pits, multiplies its effect and divides its footprint. On south faces with honest sun, friction comes from brooms and scrapers. Chemistry steps aside. On north ramps, a light film earns its keep. The goal is not dry. Its predictable grip, storage, and staging say a lot about a city's character. Bags tucked under eaves with their seams taped. Bulk piles on pads with covers that stay put. Scoops in littered bins so rain doesn't awaken pellets into a briny ooze. A little spill tray under the bin is not fussy. It's a promise to the nearby maple. Crews sweep spilled grains promptly. Pellets on bare concrete are trip seeds now and river salts later. When neighbours keep a coffee tin of grit by the stoop, they become part of the orchestra. One pinch at the threshold, not a confetti storm. Trees, soils, and pores read our winter choices longer than we do. Chlorides burn roots and change soil structure. Spring leaves curl where winter forgot restraint. A tree pit wants snow, not salt. Berm toward the trunk from the street side. Steer brine away with a small shoveled lip. Pet roots get pet-safe products. CMA blends, crushed stone fines, plain sand, plus a simple rinsing bowl by the door. In parks, cinder or washed grit earns trust. A spring vac sweep becomes part of the season's choreography so grains don't grind paths into dust. Water remembers everything. The quickest way to protect streams is to keep de-icer out of the flow in the first place. Open drains thoughtfully. Don't pour pellets into the trench you just cut to the grate. Catch basin inserts in busy zones collect the first flush of grit. They're emptied before they become small aquariums of regret. Snow dump sites sit on pads, ringed by straw wattles or silt fence. Melt travels through stone beds or vegetated swales that sip and filter. The sites earn neighbours by being tidy, no dye vats, no trash, no mystery piles, and by being seasonal, not permanent scars. Sand is a friend with conditions. It gives instant texture where chemistry yawns in deep cold. But it must be placed thin, on purpose, and swept up when ice retires. Otherwise it migrates into lungs, drains, and the soft parts of bike components. Finer is not better, it flies. Washed, angular grit stays, and the spring street sweeper, arriving before the first thunderstorm, turns winter's helpful crumbs back into a clean curb inside thresholds. Chemistry arrives on soles. A runner's extra meter at lobby doors catches the brine before it kisses interior stone. Mop buckets get a pinch of de-icer so kind wiping doesn't return as a sneaky film. Maintenance teams keep an eye on metal, door closes, escalator plates, rail sockets, because chlorides are ambitious travelers. A freshwater wipe after storms is cheap insurance. Micromobility has its own chemistry diplomacy. Bike lanes prefer grit and brine to piles of rock salt that seize chains and corrode cables. Dock pads and racks are cleared to their toes so riders don't kick pellets into drivetrains. Where bridges ice early, a pre-wet anti-icing pass before the storm uses less material than a flustered dump during it. And the lane stays legible without the white crust that becomes April's complaint. Equity is folded into every handful. Concentrate care where feet are fragile and choices few. Clinic ramps, bus pads, school corridors, senior centres, the desire lines through public housing courts. A clear zebra and humble grit do more for attendance and dignity than a palace of pellets at a luxury doorway. When money is tight, Brine rigs and brooms stretch budgets further than bags. The smarter spend is often calibration and training, not product. Culture scales down to the scoop. Flyers in plain language translate chemistry into kindness. Broom first. Use a cup, not a shovel. Save salt for shade. Bank snow toward trees, not drains. Shopkeepers learn the difference between a dry pad and a glazed pride. Neighbors adopt drains and post tiny temperature notes to group chats. 9 degrees C this morning. Use grit, not salt. Schools turn science class into local measurement. Students test runoff in cups. Watch conductance rise with careless shaking. And decide to sprinkle less next time. Measurement turns feelings into practice. Pavement thermometers in plow cabs. A tiny refractometer in a supervisor's pocket to check brine strength. A spring tally of how many bags stayed unopened. Crews swap law. The north alley wants sand at dawn. The south stairs dry by noon. Skip salt. Over seasons. Maps change color where restraint pays off. Fewer burns on lindens. Fewer slicks at the library plaza. Fewer complaints about crunchy lobbies. The loveliest winter scenes are dull underfoot. That dullness is deliberate. Broom texture, a pinch of grit, a thin, even film where needed, and no sparkly drifts of crystals. By late afternoon on a well-kept block, drains murmur, tree pits look fed not scolded, vestibules sip rather than skate, and paws come home unchewed. You don't notice the chemistry because the city used more muscle and timing than product. The lesson of de-icers is restraint as craft. Remove snow early and often. Pre-wet when prevention beats cure. Sprinkle, don't pour. Aim melt to places that sip. Sweep up what helped once it stops helping. Treat trees and pores as citizens. Remember that every grain tells a story downstream. Then friction serves walking without making spring pay for winter's haste, and the city's promise stays sweet, from stoop to storm drain to river mouth. A winter city is only as kind as the ground it puts under your feet. The same street can change its personality every few meters. Broom-finished concrete that grips. Old brick that keeps secrets between courses. Interlocking pavers that shift with the season. A metal utility plate that cools faster than the story you were telling. A wood boardwalk that drinks melt and gives it back as a surprise. Keeping streets walkable means knowing how each surface behaves when snow arrives and temperature wanders. Concrete is winter's plain-spoken friend when it is finished with humility. Broom finish or light expose? Yes. Polished slabs? No. A gentle texture welcomes boots and canes. Water finds places to pause without becoming a mirror. Joint lines deserve special manners. Saw cuts are little rivers that want to host refreeze. A quick broom pass along the joint breaks the bond before evening. Expansion joints that have gone shy, sealant missing or torn, invite a thin vein of ice to live exactly where a heel might feel it. Crews carry a short list, brush joints, dust a whisper of grit across slopes, and keep downspout mouths from declaring new rivers across the slab. Brick walks reward patience. Their beauty hides in relief and rhythm. Their trouble hides in the joints. A steel-edged shovel punishes the surface. A rubber-edged blade and a push broom do the work without shaving sand from between the bricks. Where sand has wandered, a light resweep on a dry, cold day restores the bed and reduces wobble that can turn melt into trickery. Heaved bricks at tree roots become winter's quiet bullies. The quick, temporary kindness is a little wedge of dense mat cut to size and tucked at the lip to ease the step until spring crews can reset the run. When brick meets concrete, the seam is where refreeze auditions. Brushing and a teaspoon of grit along that seam make the whole feel like one thought. Interlocking pavers learn winter through their bedding. If the base drains, they behave. If not, they sulk. Plows with plastic cutting edges glide without stealing the sand that keeps pavers true. In the lull, a stiff-hand broom lifts the film that wants to knit across the tiny beveled edges. Where a utility cut has returned as a patch of new pavers in old ground, subtle settling creates a shallow bowl. Exactly the place melt will gather and plot a fall. A narrow squeegee and a palm of sand turn the bowl into a puddle with grip and an exit. None of this is dramatic. All of it keeps ankles from giving lectures, stone flags, slate, bluestone, granite, a winter's poetry and exam. Their surfaces vary, some cleft and grippy, some honed and a little vain. Honed stone near doors must grow a longer rug or a season of grit. Cleft stone welcomes a broom and a light scattering that finds the low spots. The joints between flags are little biographies of each past summer. A metal scraper kissed along the joint, not stabbed into it, breaks thin ice without prying up a corner. Wherever a large flag meets a small one, the edge will tell the truth about maintenance. If it is lifted, a temporary ramp of dense mat does more good than 1,000 apologies. Would boardwalks and timber promenades behave like living things? Fibers swell and shrink. Screws sit proud when cold. Algae remembers where last summer's shade and splash agreed. In winter, the first rule is dull, not shiny. A bristled rotary broom teases away slush without burnishing. A sprinkle of sand lands upwind of gaps so grains fall where soles go. Screws and nail heads at proud height get a quick visit from a driver on the first dry day. A single proud fastener can turn a safe deck into a memorized bruise. Handrails are part of the ground on a boardwalk. A towel on the hour turns frost into confidence. Where the deck meets land, lay a narrow trench to a drain. Boardwalk edges love to collect thin ponds that refreeze into invisible invitations to dance. Metal is honest and cold. Utility covers, trench plates, stair nosings, and threshold bars radiate their own microclimate. Tenser, quicker to glaze, slower to thaw. The fix is friction, not glare. A handful of fine grit on a utility cover does the work chemistry struggles to do in deep cold. Non-skid tapes on stair nosings are renewed before the season, not during the storm. In plazas, trench drains with long gratings behave like friendly rivers if their mouths are kept open and the bars get a brief brush in the lull. Where a design has fallen in love with long ribbons of metal set flush with stone, crews treat those ribbons as special cases. Brush, grit. Brush, because good looks turn slippery without a little humility. Tactile paving, the bumps and bars that speak to canes and shoes, is the city's winter braille and must remain legible. The tool is a broom more than a scraper. Chemistry is used away from the plate, not on it. If glaze forms, a wood or plastic scraper breaks the bond gently. Metal edges shave bumps into lies. In cold fog or freezing mist, a towel warms the story those bumps tell. The plate's perimeter is brushed, too. A sharp lip of ice around a readable center is a tease. Not a kindness. Ramps and stairs have their own dictionary. On cast-in-place concrete ramps, the broom finish must continue across the whole fan, not stop shy of the curb where polish sneaks in. On stone treads, a thin band of grit at the nosing replaces the temptation to polish by overscraping. Anti-slip strips on interior thresholds where down in the season you least watch them. The night patrol replaces them before they start pretending to exist. Seal ants, corks, and tiny slopes make large differences. A 1% grade you can't see is the margin between a slab that dries by dusk and one that rehearses black ice every night. Where a paver plaza meets a concrete walk, a discreet, shallow fillet of mortar turns a water stop into a water slide toward the drain. Where a storefront sill forgets to shed, a narrow stainless trough, sunk flush and filled with rounded stone, receives drips and divorces them from footsteps. Designers plant these small graces. Winter caretakers keep them vivid with brooms and patience. Snow equipment learns surface etiquette. Rubber or polyurethane cutting edges for pavers and brick. Steel edges for rough concrete and packed berms. Skid shoes adjusted so blades float a breath above cleft stone. No snow blower on loose gravel. No steel scrapers on delicate inlays or plaques. Operators memorize the map of materials the way bakers memorize ovens. This block likes a fast pass, that one needs a slower, bristled persuasion. A good foreperson carries a pocket notebook of surfaces and moods. A better one turns it into a spring plan of small fixes that will make next winter calmer. Quick repairs during the season are humble. A heaved slab earns a bright cone in daylight and a mat ramp at dusk. A missing paver gets a temporary plywood square with grit until the real piece returns. A sunken utility cut gets a squeegee visit after every lull so the puddle doesn't build a resume. When temperatures allow, A low-temperature patch can shave a trip edge down just enough to redirect water. These are the stitches that keep the city's winter coat from unraveling. Chemistry meets materials with care. Rock salt bullies mortar joints and tree pits. Magnesium chloride whispers but keeps wood damp. Calcium chloride works lower but leaves floors wetter at vestibules. The practice is the same across surfaces. Remove first, then season lightly. Grit and cinders carry the day on textured stone and boardwalks. A salt sand blend at north-facing concrete ramps. Beat brine or pre-wet where the forecast promises a glass that wants prevention more than cure. The measure is always modest. Teaspoons, not shovels. By late afternoon on a well-tended block, you can read the surface story with your ankles. Concrete feels conversational, not slick. Brick hums underfoot with small relief but no surprises between courses. Pavers look ordinary, their joints visible and clean. The metal cover has a faint velvet where sand landed. The boardwalk rail is dry to the glove. Tactile plates speak clearly. You walk with your eyes on faces, not on texture, because the ground has chosen to be dull in the best sense. The lesson of surfaces is that winter kindness lives at millimeter scale. A brush joint, a lifted mat, a brushed tactile plate, a teaspoon of grit on a metal circle, a downspout politely re-aimed, a screw-turned flush, each is unremarkable alone and decisive together. Streets are not only lines on a map. They are fabrics. In winter, we wear them. Choose textures that breathe, finish them humbly, repair them lightly and often, and they will return the favor with steps that feel inevitable, which is another word for safe. Walkability in winter grows trickier when streets turn into corridors of glass and stone. High-rises change whether the way keys change music. Same notes, new mood. Wind arrives edited by corners. Snow is blown upward, then downward. Melt slides off a ledge and reappears as a dagger of ice where a passerby least expects it. The goal is simple and unglamorous. Keep downtown ordinary. That means training tall buildings to behave like good neighbors, and teaching the ground how to forgive the sky. Wind is the first editor. In summer, it is a rumor. In winter, it becomes punctuation, commas at intersections, exclamation points at corners, ellipses in long, shaded blocks. Designers make choices years before the first storm. Setbacks that soften gusts, canopies that break falls, wind-permeable screens at plazas, evergreen shrubs arranged not as decoration but as diffusers. In daily practice, crews lean into this grammar with portable means. A perforated wind fence clipped to a construction barricade cuts drift teeth in half. A line of bike hoops doubles as a snow sifter. A low hedge earns its winter wage by slowing a gust just enough that the sidewalk stops acting like a conveyor belt. Falling snow and ice are the second test. A roof releases a shrug of snow at noon. A cornice grows icicles that gleam until they become mischief. A glass facade weeps condensation that turns to a bead, a thread, a drip, a slip. Buildings that remember winter add snow guards on sloped roofs and heat trace gutters. They keep scuppers clear. They send melt to downspouts that point into stone-filled beds rather than across public walkways. Where an architectural flourish insists on being theatrical. Property teams add a quiet countermeasure, a discreet cable that warms the lip, a narrow catch gutter under a canopy edge. A slope splash plate that invites water to choose a safer line sidewalk sheds. Those temporary roofs built for facade work can be winter friends or foes. The friendly kind is lit warm, swept often, and drained thoughtfully. Its roof pitches toward a leader that empties into a contained run, not onto the sidewalk in a sparkling sheet. Its posts sit on pads that don't turn the walkway into a slalom. The unfriendly kind collects melt in shallow pans and releases it as applause when a bus passes. Crews keep sheds honest with a daily choreography. Check the roof for ponding, brush the drip line, open the drain, shake the light snow before it knits into a crust. A shed that remembers it is a street's hat, not its shrug, keeps heads and ankles out of trouble. The T-tower bases, vestibules and canopies do double duty. The canopy is not merely a welcome. It is a snow governor. Its edge is kept clean with a push-pole during lulls. Choose your avalanche at a quiet moment rather than surprise a passerby later. Heat tracing at the drip line is set modestly. just enough to prevent daggers, not enough to breed steam that recondenses into a rink beyond the canopy. Underfoot, the ground is textured, broom-finished concrete rather than polished stone, grit in the topcoat where a plaza meets the door. A narrow trench to the nearest drain hides beneath the canopy's shadow so the noon melt gets off stage before dusk insists on a scene change. Downtown corners are where wind and attention collide. A turning gust sculpts a private dune exactly where a crosswalk begins. A street plow's windrow leans against a curb return like a patient audience. The fix is precise and early. Crews feather the berm outward before it hardens. A trenching spade cuts a clean door through the ridge in line with the zebra. A palm's worth of cinders is tamped into the upwind lip so the drift loses its bite. Signage is modest and local. A fold-out cone for 20 minutes during a roof clearing, then gone. A reflective whisker marking a hydrant's apron. No forests of caution boards that the eye stops seeing by February. Loading docks and alley mouths rewrite the sidewalk weather every hour. Warm air breathes out. Condensation paints the slab into gloss. A swinging door pushes snow toward the public path. The choreography is simple. A rubber mat beneath the sill. A squeegee lean every hour on the half. A narrow channel nudged toward a drain. A push-pole for the dock canopy's edge. Where deliveries must cross the sidewalk, a brushed braid path, 2 shovels wide, connects dock and curb without slicing the pedestrian line. And a spoon of grit lands where a hand truck's small wheels would otherwise discover a surprise. Transit entrances at tower feet bring their own rhythms. Escalator mouths gather snow on treads that arrives as water at the bottom plate. The fix is a longer drying runway and a gentle brush pass every few minutes, not a heroic dump of pellets that chews rubber. Elevator call alcoves are cut free of berms wide enough for chair and aid. Call buttons are wiped so gloves don't skid. A bead of texture marks the threshold where wheels pause. A tower that hosts a station inherits the station's winter manners. Tactile edges brushed. Rails rubbed warm, and the yellow stripe allowed to be its clear. Legible self. Glass speaks a winter dialect. Fog, drip, glaze. Property crews carry microfiber and check the base of curtain walls every hour in storm conditions. A thin silicone bead at the sill's edge turns a drip into 2 polite side streams that miss the walkway. Where an architectural groove insists on gathering water, a small stainless trough quietly catches and leads it toward a bed of stone. Brilliance is for marketing photos. Dull safety is for doors at 5 p.m. when the sky is blue-black and everyone is in a hurry. Communication downtown replaces menace with routine. Icefall hazard signs appear briefly when a roof edge is being cleared and disappear when the task is done. Notices at building entrances are factual and finite. Clearing North Canopy 11:10 to 11:25. Flaggers present. Please use west door. Security staff become winter ushers, waving a gentle detour when a drip line is being tamed, handing a small scoop of grit to a courier whose route met a gloss. Radios speak housekeeping. Cornice 24B cleared. Sidewalk reopened. Panic makes poor pedestrians. Calm specifics make good ones. Night patrols earn their pay in canyons. Wind rises again when rush hour sighs. Black ice grows where manhole covers and steel utility plates shrug off heat faster than stone. Crews work by ear as much as eye. The squeak of a broom on glaze, the high ring of a heel on metal. They dust a spoon of sand, tap a drain grate free, wipe a handrail, lift a small icicle with tongs into a bucket as if it were a delicate artifact, which it is, just not the kind you keep. A good downtown morning feels ordinary because the night has already told all the drama to go home. Not all fixes are chemicals or tools. Some are habits. Sandwich boards live on the building side of the walk, never in the desire path or the ramp fan. Outdoor heaters for diners sit far enough from snow piles that thaw doesn't travel under chairs. Smoking corners get a mat because ash loves to masquerade as grit and fails at the job. Security bollards wear knit caps, rubber sleeves that keep them from becoming icy chess pieces. Bike corrals are the winter face of a block's manners. They are brushed to their toes and never become festive snow monoliths. When storms go theatrical, removal joins the script. Narrow downtown sidewalks leave no honest place to store a week's worth of snow. Small loaders nibble, not gouge. A spotter holds the curb cut like a lifeline. Trucks queue in a short train and depart without horn choruses. The sweep afterward is soft, a broom's quick pass to erase metal scratch, a towel on a rail, a final look upward for a last lurking dagger. The best compliment for the crew is also the quietest. It looks like it was always like this. Equity in canyons is measured in inches and seconds. A dry, wide stripe to the bus pad. A clear crescent around the APS button. A tactile plate that feels like braille, not archaeology. A curb cut whose fan is open to its edges. A storefront vestibule that doesn't turn a white cane into a wet brush. Downtown is a lot of thresholds pretending to be one. When every small one behaves, the whole behaves. By late afternoon on a well-mannered winter day, downtown looks unremarkable. The canopy edges are tidy. The corners show low, logical piles. Crosswalk doors align with stripes. Drains murmur beneath metal grates. No signboard has migrated into the ramp's fan. Rails feel like hands, not icicles. And people walk with their eyes on faces, not on their feet. Nothing about this is accidental. It is maintenance expressed as urban courtesy. The lesson of tall streets is that big buildings owe small graces. Break the wind. Catch the drip. Choose your avalanche. Keep the door ordinary and the ground dull. Aim water to places that sip. Brush tactile edges. Cut the windrow doors early and often. Then even the loudest skyline can keep a quiet promise at ankle height. A winter city is stitched together by the places where feet meet vehicles. Station forecourts, bus terminals, train platforms, ferry slips, and the small squares where routes braid into timetables. Walkability here is more than comfort. It's throughput. If these seams behave, dry enough, legible enough, patient enough, thousands of trips stay ordinary. Ordinary is the victory. First comes the forecourt, the threshold between street and system. Wind loves these plazas, making tidy drifts where a person least expects them. At the corner of a ticket machine, at the turnstile where a pocket search begins, at the broad step before the doors. Crews give forecourts their own cadence. Short, frequent passes with bristled brooms and rubber-edged shovels, not heroic scrapes that polish stone into theatre. Drains are found before the storm and kept found during it. A 2-inch trench to each grate is worth a paragraph of policy. Downspouts from station roofs are aimed toward beds of river stone or tree pits. If a spout insists on crossing a path, a low foam ramp gently convinces the water to choose a safer line. Platforms are winter's long pianos. Every key matters. The yellow tactile edge is a sentence that must remain readable by shoe, cane, and eye. Brushing is the instrument, light, often, along the bumps. If a film forms, a plastic or wood scraper breaks the bond without shaving texture. A sprinkle of sand begins a few inches behind the edge, never on it, so traction improves while guidance stays honest. In the lull between trains, a broom raises the bump's voice again. The sound under a cane, tap, 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 becomes a quick report card. Passable, safe, understood. Stairs and escalators are truth tellers. Open-air flights drink wind and freeze at the top tread first. Indoor stairs inherit melt from 100 boots at the landing. The rule is dull and saving, no shine. Broom, then a whisper of grit, with extra on landings and turns. Rails get a towel en route. Metal chills faster than intention, and a warm rail steadies more bodies than signs ever will. Escalators want mats placed far enough from the comb plate that fibers can't become teeth. Crews dust the treads with a fine brush and keep the bottom plate dry so shoes don't become wet stamps. During freezing rain, a polite sign slows escalators to a calmer speed. In deep snow, a switch to stairs becomes an announcement with dignity, not a surprise. Elevators deserve winter's kindest logic. Their lobbies gather wheel tracks and stroller drips. A continuous runner, end-to-end without gaps, turns lobbies from rink to sponge. Buttons are wiped so gloves don't skate. The floor at the threshold gets a bead of texture where wheels pause. Outside, the elevator call alcove is cut free of berms with a wide door, aligned to curb cuts rather than pretty lines on drawings. The alcove's roof edge is checked for icicles. A push pole waits, and the moment to drop them is chosen when the space is empty and a warning word can be given. Bus bays are winter's choreography in miniature. The dry pad where doors land is the stage. The rest is wings. Operators kneel to the texture, not to the mirror. Staff cut a shallow trench from pad to grate so midday melt has an exit. A single spoon of cinders on the upwind lip of the pad quiets the drift teeth that form between arrivals. Where multiple routes share a bay, a quick pass with a broom after each bus is more useful than a grand clean at noon. The rhythm prevents compaction, which prevents chemistry, which prevents apology. Wayfinding must be legible under hats and hoods. Painted arrows and footprints reappear from under dustings. Freestanding signs are staged on the plough side of windrows, not on the pedestrian side. When a temporary detour routes walkers around a closed stair, the detour itself is cleared, lit, and obvious, the shortest, driest line between 2 points, not a scavenger hunt. Announcements choose humble facts over poetry. North stairs closed. Use ramp by Bay 4, cleared. A small map at glove height, not poster height. Respects the moment when someone's fingers are cold and patience thinner than the snow. Ticket machines and validators hide winter puzzles. People pause to fish for cards, and pauses breed puddles. A sacrificial mat in front of each machine drinks the pause. A towel nearby keeps touchscreens legible. A small shelf, nothing fancy, just a stainless lip, catches a wallet while a hand taps. Where machines sit under drip line, an awning extension saves an hour of wiping and a dozen slips. Validators outdoors get wiped like handrails. Their little green lights work better when not frosted. Ferry slips and riverwalk stops are winter's edge cases. Air above, water below, physics in a playful mood. Deck boards prefer brine pre-wet before storms, a broom pass in the lull, and sand placed upwind of joints where first steps land. The gangway wants a dry stripe, a grit bin at either end, and a handrail rubbed warm just before boarding. Announcements mention the deck as much as the departure. Watch your step, dry path marked. Seagulls are not part of the plan, but they do help point out where food dripped and the slip quietly started. Paratransit zones get priority measured in inches and kindness. The curb cut meets a dry pad large enough to pivot a chair. The shortest path to the door is brushed, not once but often. The automatic door button shines without an ice collar. Staff step outside for the 1 minute that matters, when the van arrives and a ramp finds the ground. It is not much time. It is the difference between service and theatre. Vendors and kiosks at hubs carry winter like a second product. A small broom stands by the coffee window. A scoop of sand lives near the pretzel cart. A signboard is set inside the windbreak, not in the desire path. Their efforts are tiny and contagious. A clean lane to a kiosk teaches the next kiosk a better habit than any memo can. Night crews inherit the seams when rush hour dissolves. Their patrol is a soft march. Brush tactile edges, wipe rails, dust sand where black ice floated, open drains, check downspout ramps, look up for icicles, look down for shine. Radios speak gently. Platform B northwest edge brushed, safe. Bay 6 pad reset. Elevator lobby runner swapped. The language is housekeeping, not heroics. Chemistry at hubs is measured, not dumped. Chlorides corrode the hardware that keeps cities moving. Escalators, door closers, rails, bridge plates, so friction does more work than pellets. Where temperatures demand help, magnesium blends or beet brines go down in thin films, not in drifts. The goal is not to chase dry. It is to keep predictable grip. Dry arrives on its own schedule once the surfaces can breathe. By late afternoon on a good winter day. A hub looks like it took care of itself. Doors meet texture. Tactile edges speak clearly. Stairs are dull, not shiny. Escalators feel unremarkable. Bus pads have a light bruise of sand where soles land. Drains murmur faintly, pleased with their employment. People move with their attention unspent, reading signs, holding hands, finding seats, because the ground below them remembered to be an ally. The lesson of transit hubs is that walkability scales. The same courtesy that clears a stoop, brush, Trench, dull the shine, keeps 1,000 feet safe between announcements. Winter becomes a logistics of kindness. The right tool for the square foot, the right pass for the minute between arrivals, the right texture for the place where the day's momentum begins again. A winter city proves its manners in the hour before the first bell. If sidewalks are the city's promise, school routes are the proof. Small boots and bigger backpacks. Mittens that drop and are retrieved. Parents who half walk, half hover. Buses that kneel like courteous animals. And crossing guards who translate weather into choreography. Keeping streets walkable means putting children and their adults at the center of the morning map. The routes begin blocks away. A safe corridor is not a line on a brochure. It is a sequence of hand-sized decisions. Curb cuts kept wide to their edges. Windrow doors cut on both sides of every crosswalk. Drains open so yesterday's melt doesn't greet today's toes as a moat. Volunteers adopt intersections, 1 per person, 1 minute per corner, to brush tactile bumps, dust a little grit, and check the APS button and its crescent of space. The work is modest, the gain immense. When the stream of kids arrives, the ground behaves. Crossing guards are winter conductors. Their tools are simple. A high-vis coat that reads like daylight, boots with soft lugs, a small bucket of sand, and a habit of listening to the pavement as much as watching the traffic. They arrive early to cut a fresh path through the ridge the street plough left, brush the zebra back into legibility, and tamp a strip of cinders into the upwind lip where drifts grow teeth. When the flood begins, they use pauses as opportunities, while one wave clears the crosswalk. They wipe the push button, shake off a sign snowcap, and flick a spoon of grit where a parent's heel just hesitated. Kiss and ride lanes either keep dignity or collect apologies. The geometry helps. A clear, dry pad where doors open. A low, saw-toothed berm between the curb and the travel lane so slush doesn't flow back to where feet land. Cones placed to suggest a slow bend rather than a tight shoot. The adult choreography is simple. Pull forward all the way to the sign. Stop on texture, not mirror. One door opens toward the sidewalk. Goodbyes happen briefly. Custodians widen the pad to stroller width so a younger sibling doesn't have to tip into snow. A narrow trench from the pad to the nearest grate gives melt somewhere to go at 11 o'clock, so the noon bell doesn't inherit a rink. Buses are allies of small feet when the pad is honest. Operators kneel to the driest stripe. Aids lower ramps onto grit, not shine. Where the bus stop is offset from the main entrance, a braided path, 2 shovels wide, connects the pad to the door, staying clear of downspout zones and awning drips. On multiple bus mornings, staff run a quiet loop. After the first bus departs, a broom pass restores texture before the next arrives. If the windrow at the curb returns as if alive, a quick cut with a trenching spade maintains the doorway through it. This work does not wear capes. It wears a lanyard and a smile. Special education arrivals have priority and a different rhythm. The van pad is kept as faithful as a promise. Clear curb cut, ramp slope brushed every hour, rail wiped of frost with a towel. The route from van to doorway is inspected at a human scale. Think of wheels, think of guiding hands, think of a child who needs 2 steps to decide and a 3rd to commit. Inside, a vestibule mat is kept continuous. No gaps that swallow small casters. Door buttons gleam without ice necklaces. A small sign reads "You first," and everyone means it. Bike racks and scooter corrals do winter civic work for schools. When they are brushed and reachable, kids arrive under their own steam and the kiss and ride thins. The brush pass is practical. Clear a crescent around each rack. Don't pile snow where locks need room. Leave a dry stripe from rack to door. Helmets drip. A sacrificial mat beneath the hooks saves the lobby from becoming a dotted line of refreeze. A small poster near the racks, winter wheels, ride slower, ring sooner, walk shiny patches, becomes culture by March. Playgrounds are part of walkability because they are part of the day. A winter smart campus keeps 1 loop open at recess, a shoveled circuit with 2 widened overtake spots, so bodies can move without cluster and slip. The steps back in from recess get a broom pass every 40 minutes. Rails are rubbed with a towel so mittens meet warmth, not frost. The door that faces south gets less chemistry. The door that faces north gets more texture. A custodian's radio message, "North door slippery tongue wiped," Sounds like nothing and prevents a nurse visit. Downspouts and roof lines are school's winter mischief makers. The art room's gutter loves to throw a thread across the side path. The gym roof dumps a shrug of snow in late morning sun. Maintenance teams pre-aim spouts toward beds of river stone, not sidewalk. Where re-aiming is impossible, a low-foam ramp steers melt aside. Staff keep a push pole by doors under big eaves. They choose the moment to pull down accumulated snow while the path is empty and a warning word can be given. Picking your avalanche beats being surprised by it. Handwritten winter maps live in offices and on phones. A thick marker circle around North Ramp refreezes after 1 p.m. A star on crossing teeth grow here, cinders. Upwind. An underline at bus. Pad needs second pass at 8:10. These are the details no city-wide plan can print, but every campus can learn in 3 storms. PTAs and parent groups become winter guilds. Sign-up sheets not for baked goods but for corners and drains. I've got the library lot crosswalk. I'll own the grates on oak. The currency is not applause. It's a shared 30 seconds saved for every small boot in line inside. The vestibule is a sponge with a policy. Mats go bristle rubber textile, in that order, with no gaps. A tub of kid-height paper towels stands mutely, catching drips before they travel into halls. Step, wipe, step becomes a game. The kind of sign a second grader designs is the kind of sign a kindergartner obeys. Classrooms near entrances keep extra socks. The nurse keeps cocoa powder not as medicine but as morale. None of this is dramatic. All of it keeps the corridor from becoming a practice rink by third period. After-school care rewrites winter a second time each day. The refreeze patrol starts earlier on short sun afternoons. Curb cuts checked at 2:30, bus pads brushed again, the trench to the grate refreshed. Crossing guards who return for the late wave carry their little sand scoops like talismans. Coaches walk the route to the gym once with a broom, then with a team. Kids who help pretend they are paid in secrets. How to spot black ice by the way light sits on it. How to listen for crisp steps versus soft ones. How to dust grit with a magician's flourish, then step back to admire the velvet. Equity is a winter word, too. Not all families have cars. Not all kids have boots that deserve the name. Schools that partner with city crews to keep footpaths and bus stops ahead of schedule are quietly investing in attendance and attention. A clear zebra is an invitation to show up. A brushed tactile plate is a sentence that says, "We expected you." Where neighborhoods lack tree lawns and good places to store snow, the school itself becomes the snow pantry, piles staged on the field edges and in low, long ribbons along fences. You can tell a generous campus by its piles. Functional, not theatrical. Low, not daunting. Placed as if someone remembered that shoulders come in many heights. The test of all this work is simple and visible at 8:02 a.m. Do kids flow like a creek or stutter like a faucet? Do crossing guards look like they are dancing or grimacing? Do caregivers step back after the hug and find their footing without a glance down? Does the bus door meet texture? Are the doors through the windrow aligned with where tired feet actually cross? When a campus gets winter right, the morning rush looks ordinary, which is to say, miraculous. Children enter with their attention unspent, and teachers begin without the preamble of apologies. Schools teach winter to the city as much as the city teaches winter to schools. A corridor of small feet shows where the map truly runs. A line of mittens drying shows where condensation wants to live. A PDA grit bucket at a corner shows how quickly culture can change a block's behavior. Little feet first is not sentimental. It is technical. It sets the standard for every other threshold and crossing the city keeps. A winter city is stitched together by its doorways. Streets can be brushed, curb cuts can be generous, crossings can be dignified. Yet if the threshold betrays you, the day goes sideways in a single step. The entrance is the seam where weather shakes hands with warmth, where boots confess their travels, where moisture decides whether it will dry politely or scheme into a slick. Walkability depends as much on vestibules as on plows. The first tool is texture. Outside the door, a stiff coir mat or ribbed scraper catches clots, salt, grit, the small gravel that hides in tread like secrets. The mat's job is to be abused. It lives a little proud of the slab, not sunken into a tray where melt can puddle and breed a thin, deceptive film. Just inside, a rubber-backed runner takes the relay. Channels drink the remaining wet. Edges lie flat so a hurried heel doesn't find a lip. A third surface, deeper inside, is for drying, textile or needle punch that likes to be walked upon. 3 changes of texture in 3 steps is a quiet poem the body reads without thinking. Scrape, sip, dry, door hardware learns winter manners. Push bars collect frost from breath and drafts. A towel lives on a hook out of sight so the patrol can wipe them during the lulls. Closes are tuned to avoid slamming in gusts, yet not linger open long enough to welcome snow. A tiny adjustment to a closer pin can decide whether a vestibule becomes an anteroom of safety or a corridor of draft-borne condensation. Where a second set of doors makes the vestibule, the rhythm is generosity. Outside door light, inside door patient. Both never open together longer than a heartbeat. Air curtains, if they exist, are aimed and quiet, not a blast that startles, but a veil that discourages drift. The choreography of water is the vestibule's religion. Boot trays are shallow and many, placed where they do not require acrobatics to reach. Umbrella stands sit on sacrificial mats. A fine mesh beneath a coat rack keeps drips off tile that would otherwise polish itself into a rink. Custodial carts carry mop buckets charged with a teaspoon of de-icer so that the kindness of a wipe does not return as a thin glaze. Mop water is replaced before it turns grey. A squeegee wand travels with the cart for glass and for the little tide line at thresholds. The goal is not shine. It is dull, honest safety. Signage wears humility. Step, wipe, step near the door. Wet floor signs used like punctuation, placed for emphasis when fresh tracks appear, removed when the sentence ends. Permanent signs that shout are ignored. Small placards that arrive and depart with the weather are read. Where a vestibule narrows, a polite arrow in chalk or tape suggests a flow. Keep right. Not because rules are lovely, but because order prevents shoulder bumps that topple packages and attention. Materials matter more in winter. Polished stone is theatrical and unkind. Honed stone forgives. Smooth concrete near doors is a prank. Broom finished feels like an ally. If a lobby keeps its gloss, it must widen the drying runway and shorten the path from outside to seating so feet do not dance longer than necessary. In old buildings where tile cannot change its temperament, a longer runner is cheaper than a lawsuit and cozier than a caution cone farm. Ramps and thresholds for wheels receive particular attention. The gentle slope into a lobby is winter's little violin. It sings when tuned. The lip between outside and in is shaved of ice first, then kept honest with a narrow bead of grit right at the high point where a pushchair might otherwise stall. Tactile strips at indoor ramps get brushed. Yes, indoors, because melt sneaks everywhere, and canes speak truth about places the eye thinks it understands. Automatic door buttons are cleared and wiped. A little crescent is kept open around the post so no one must do a snow ballet to press it. Behind the scenes, vents learn to exhale where they help. A heat register pointed at a wet doormat is a kindness. One aimed at the door glass breeds condensation that drips precisely where ankles pass. Air movement is as important as temperature. A small fan, set low and quiet, moves heavy air just enough that drying feels inevitable instead of aspirational. Thermostats are nudged to acknowledge the wet. A degree warmer during peak arrivals reduces the lifespan of shine on floors. A degree cooler at night prevents overdrying that turns salt into powder that tracks everywhere. Retail and public buildings stage micro-rituals. The grocery's vestibule keeps a broom for the stray pellet of rock salt that leaps into a wheel. The librarian's desk has a stack of paper towels for dripping gloves and a discreet bin for the aftermath. The clinic's volunteer does a 5-minute patrol each hour. Wipe the push plate, shake the runner's end. Look for the telltale grey that means the mat has drunk enough and wants ringing. In schools, student safety patrols earn more by tending a doorway than by wearing a sash. They learn where puddles begin and end, and their names become synonyms for "we noticed." Carts and strollers reveal truths adults miss. A stroller wheel widens a wet streak. A hand truck etches a thaw ridge across a mat. A rolling walker finds the dip nobody else feels. Vestibules that welcome wheels put rugs end to end, not staggered, and avoid gaps that swallow small casters. Door thresholds are kept free of grit accumulations that click like a metronome under wheels and sweep grit deeper into bearings. A tiny ramp made of dense mat at a high threshold is the simplest act of winter diplomacy. Pets and paws deserve a line in the plan. In dog-friendly buildings, a small station just inside, the kind with a towel, a shallow tray, and a jar of pet-safe grit, turns a lobby from a slip risk into a club for neighbours. The towel is not only for paws. It trains owners to pause, which interrupts the momentum that carries wet further into the building. A cheerful sign, "Paw Paws," does more than a scold. It makes the ritual belong to the block's culture. Condensation is winter's stealth artist. It paints the inside of glass with fog that weeps into a thread, then a bead, then a drip right where a person will place a foot while thinking about keys. The answer is both physics and habit. A microfiber wipe on the hour. A slim tray at the base of the glass to catch the insistence. A very small bead of clear silicone creating a dam so drips run to the sides. Entrances are not museums. They are workshops for managing state changes. Evenings and nights rewrite vestibules constantly. After the last rush, mats are lifted and stood to drain. A second runner replaces the first so the lobby sleeps on something dry. Boot trays are emptied into mop buckets, not into sinks that don't deserve pebbles. A last pass wipes the inner push bar so morning hands meet warmth instead of frost. The lighting is turned down, not off, and set warm. Golden light makes wet look like wet, not like shadow. The lock clicks. The floor sighs. Morning tells you whether the seam held. If the first 5 steps inside feel ordinary, no squeal under soles, no sudden breath intake, no dance, you know the vestibule did its job. The beauty of a good entrance is that it erases itself. You remember the book you came for, the bread you bought, the bus you caught. You don't remember the floor. City winter thrives on such forgettable heroics. The lesson of entrances and vestibules is that walkability has an indoor half. Streets deliver you to thresholds. Thresholds deliver you to your errands, your work, your warm seat by a window. When the seam is tended, by mats and mops, by airflow and modest chemistry, by small cloths and large patience, the city's promise continues across the line. It's a simple covenant: scrape, sip, dry, wipe, wring, repeat. Welcome, safely. A city that stays walkable should also stay rollable. Winter does not cancel small wheels. It changes their manners. When bike lanes, scooter docks, and delivery routes remain usable, sidewalks breathe easier. Pedestrians keep their space. Couriers keep their balance. The day's errands keep their dignity. The trick is to treat micromobility as first-class winter traffic, cleared on purpose, not as a side effect. Protected lanes are winter's narrow canals. Snow loves to lodge between the separator and the curb, to harden into a ridge that squeezes bars and elbows. The answer is proportion. A compact tractor with a bristled rotary broom passes first, clearing light snow to the drain without polishing the slab. A narrow blade follows only where drifts argue. Operators lift the broom as they cross driveway mouths so the strip doesn't become a gutter that freezes. They feather snow away from crossings so a rider can look, signal, and roll without climbing a cliff of plough leavings. When the street plough throws a windrow across the lane. A trailing door crew cuts clean portals at every side street and mid-block crossing. Aligning openings with where wheels actually go, separators themselves can act like snow fences. Flexible posts gather drifts. Rubber curbs hoard slush. Cities that think ahead choose hardware with winter in mind. Posts that unbolt for seasonal removal where drifts are routine. Low, beveled curbs instead of tall, boxy ones in tight corridors. Gaps every so many feet that let a broom slide melt toward a drain. In spring, crews will praise their winter selves for leaving those gaps. In January, a rider will pass through what looks like good luck and is actually foresight measured in inches. Intersections are where winter and attention collide. Conflict zones, the place a turning car meets a straight-going bike, must be legible at a glance. During lulls, Crews brush the green paint back into view not to be pretty but to make the rule visible. Bikes here, turning there. The same pass exposes stop bars and curb radii so speeds come down without a sign ever speaking. At two-stage turn boxes, the little waiting square gets extra grit. People put a foot down there, and feet deserve texture. Refuge islands for bikes, mini peninsulas that shorten a crossing, collect wind teeth on the upwind edge. A tamped strip of cinders that quiets the bite where a tire will first land. Drainage keeps lanes honest. Long, protected runs can trap melt if a single grate naps under a quilt. The winter map marks each grate with a dot and a reminder. Open after first lull, again at dusk, because a minute with a gutter scoop now prevents an evening of black ice later. Downspouts from adjacent buildings are aimed by code or by courtesy, not across the lane, not onto the sidewalk, but toward a tree lawn or into a bed of river stones that sip rather than spit. In the rare spots where you cannot re-aim, a tiny snow ramp steers the drip's thin river away from the wheel track. Bike parking is part of winter mobility, not decoration. Racks should not become snow totems. Clear a crescent around each, and don't pile drifts where bars need to slide and locks need to turn. At storefronts, keep a drip-free path from rack to door so riders don't track melt into vestibules as if they were guilty of the weather. In residential districts, make one side of each rack cluster the winter face with a broom-finished pad. Salt bites chains and bearings, but a quick brush plus a sprinkle of sand saves a dozen greasy repairs come spring. Shared systems need their own rituals. Docking stations are cleared to their toes, not just their crowns. A rider who must climb a berm to dock will choose a signpost instead. Scooters do poorly with hidden ice. Crews dust approaches with fine grit and sweep decks so grip tape grips. Batteries sulk in cold. Charging teams rotate stock, some vehicles out, some warming, so range stays honest and no one gets stranded by optimism. A little card by a dock, cold reduces range. Plan a shorter ride, is kinder than a hotline number after the fact. Courier routes are walkability's secret allies. When delivery bikes and e-cargo trikes can rely on predictable, ploughed lanes, they stay off sidewalks and keep speed out of pedestrian space. Their staging nooks, those tight, informal corners by service doors, need a broom, a drip tray by the loading sill, a tiny trench to the nearest drain. A rubber mat under the sill defeats the noon refreeze that creeps from warm inside to cold out. Where couriers must deviate, wayfinding matters. A winter D2 sign that points to the treated parallel street feels like a friend waving you around a mess. Etiquette slows with temperature. Riders shorten their ambitions, widen their margins, and announce themselves sooner. Bells ring at mid-block, not just at crossings. Lights burn day bright, steady front, blinking rear, because dusk eats contrast. Fenders are not fashion. They are diplomacy with everyone behind you. Gloves gain grip, not bulk. Lenses gain amber. Tires gain tiny teeth. In true cold, pressure drops a touch. Contact patches grow. Confidence returns by degrees. A kid heads to school on a beater bike with boots on pedals and remembers that balance is mostly patience. That kid is the city's best teacher. Bridges and boardwalks are micromobility's winter exam. Air under and over means ice before anywhere else. Crews treat these first and last. Light brine pre-wet before a storm. A broom pass during the lull. A dusting of grit upwind of expansion joints where a wheel can fidget. The ramp onto the bridge gets a dry stripe as a promise. The surface ahead was seen and respected. Grit bins at either end let anyone, walker or rider, add a teaspoon of help. The bins earn their keep the first time a stranger uses them without being told. Where bike lanes mingle with bus stops, floating stops with islands and a bike bypass, snow invents puzzles. The bypass must be cleared to its edges so canes do not wander into the lane. The island must be dry where doors land. The zebra between island and sidewalk must have its door through the windrow. Crews move like tailors. Cut here, hem there, leave a pleat for melt. Bus operators kneel the coach to the dry patch. Riders wait on texture, not on wishful shine. It looks choreographed because it is. Chemistry belongs in the lane the way it belongs on sidewalks, sparingly. Chlorides corrode frames and seize cables. Where temperatures allow, Grit and friction do the work. Where true cold arrives, magnesium blends whisper instead of shout. A post-storm rinse at public bike wash stations earns smiles, and fewer creaks come April. These stations can be simple: a hose, a grate, a sign that says light spray. Say nice things. Behavior is infrastructure. 2. Walk your bike on shiny patches. Yield with a bow, not a brake squeal. Signal early. Assume eyes are slower in hoods and hats. Small slogans printed on winter route signs make decency feel like membership rather than scolding. Delivery companies brief riders on slower cornering and warm-up braking. Schools add winter wheels to assemblies the same week they talk about hats and mittens. Culture scales.by late afternoon on a good winter day. A rider can trace a safe line from rack to lane to crossing without performing acrobatics. The lane shows broom texture, not polish. The great swallows melt with a small, satisfied sound. The green paint of conflict zones peeks through. The island feels steady under a boot. The rack by the grocer looks like a tool, not a snowbank. Pedestrians notice only that bikes are not on their path and couriers not in their way. That absence is the city's success. Winter's reputation is made on downtown corners, but its character is decided on ordinary streets, front steps and garden gates, rowhouse stoops and corner duplexes, the patches of pavement where neighbours become infrastructure. A walkable city depends on 1,000 microchoices that happen far from plough depots, which way a shovel tilts at the end of a driveway, where a windrow is given a door, who remembers the storm drain by the maple. The work is modest, the effect enormous. On a residential block, safety travels at stroller speed. Snow storage is the first neighborhood art. The question is not can you clear it, but where will you let it live? Pile it on the tree lawn where roots drink and sightlines stay low. Tuck it along fence bases where it won't creep back onto the walk as a sheet tomorrow at noon. Keep it out of bike lanes and bus pads. Keep it away from crosswalk fans and curb-cut throats. A driveway's mouth is tempting, but a tall pile there steals sight from short people and seated ones. The best piles are long and low, sawtoothed so a thaw doesn't skate off as a hole. When an alley runs behind the houses, a small, shared pocket becomes a snow pantry, a place to carry shovel loads once and forget them for the season. Property lines draw legal borders, not winter ones. Walkers don't step down at lot lines. Neither should traction. A generous block has a shared rhythm. Each household clears one shovel width past the invisible boundary and then a little more. The overlap means no seam grows into a ridge and no ridge into a trip. If one stoop is vacant or elderly, the next stoop widens again, and the block becomes a braided rope, strength out of overlap, not heroics. When a new family moves in, winter is how they learn the neighborhood's language. A knock, a spare scoop of grit, a we do this side too. Trash and recycling day can ruin a week if bins go thoughtless. A bin left in the desire path, the natural line of feet, creates detours that compact snow into treachery. The kind habit is simple. Stage bins on the plough side of the berm, never on the pedestrian side. Leave a ladle of grit in the bin after it's emptied and give the curb cut a friendly teaspoon where the truck's tire polishes ice into glass. A lid closed all the way is not a nicety. It is a kindness to the person who must lift it without gloves. Mail and parcels are the block's daily test of accessibility. A mailbox with a clean apron saves a carrier 100 microslips. Steps that have been brushed and rebrushed after the dog's walk keep the morning paper from landing in a slop that will freeze into a welcome mat of apology. 4 front door deliveries, a cleared path from sidewalk to stoop is worth more than a dry stoop surrounded by a moat. The small, perfectly placed door cut through the windrow where the walkway meets the sidewalk is an act of hospitality you perform for strangers and for your own ankles a day. Later, sidewalk edges collect small problems. Grit that wanders, paw prints that polish, stroller tracks that compress. A broom, yes, a broom, after every shovel pass keeps the surface textured and the edges honest. On brick walks, a light metal scraper rides the joints to break the wet handshake between snow and sand. On concrete, A rubber-edged shovel spares the slab skin while lifting the film that would become a rink by supper. The last step is always the same. Look down the block as if you were 5 years old, or 80, or using a cane. Does the path look inevitable? If not, give it 2 more minutes. Dogs and paws have their winter ergonomics. Salt bites. Pellets hurt. Many blocks now keep a small jar of pet-safe grit by the stoop, calcium magnesium acetate or just sand, and shake a polite line along the walkway after the last outing of the night. A rinsing bowl by the door saves a morning of licking sore pads. The rule for leashes mirrors the rule for shovels: short and steady at corners, long and curious where the world is empty. A dog who pauses to read the snow also warns you where melt is pooling. Those pause marks are maps. Sprinkle there, trees are citizens with roots in the crosswalk conversation. Their basins want snow, not salt. Bank snow in tree pits. Keep the salty slush away from trunks by shaping a little berm on the street side. If your block uses beet blend or sand, the tree will thank you in spring with fewer burned leaves and a fuller crown. When you clear a storm drain near a tree, celebrate quietly. You have warded a neighbor. A simple adopt a drain habit, 1 grate per household, turns a block into a winter water machine. Melt goes under, not over. Sidewalks dry in stripes instead of glazing in sheets. Porches and stoops are winter rooms. The best ones stage the battle thoughtfully. Coir mat outside, rubber runner inside. A boot tray that keeps melt from wandering. A towel for the rail that gathers frost at odd hours. A bucket with a teaspoon of de-icer in its mop water so the threshold wipe doesn't freeze harder than the storm. Steps are brushed downward, not upward, so crumbs of ice don't climb back underfoot. A small, soft brush for the last dusting, like you'd use on a horse, polishes the safety without polishing the slip. Neighbors learn the weather of their own block, the crosswind at the corner. The shaded patch beside the ivy wall, the south-facing slab that drinks sun greedily after noon. The shared wisdom is specific. When wind is from the west, a drift forms behind the blue sedan. Shovel that first. The sun reaches the brick at 1:30. Don't salt there at lunch. The alley mouth weeps at dusk. Cut a little gutter to the grate by the lamppost. These sentences could never appear in a city-wide manual. They live in shouted thanks and friendly texts and chalk arrows that appear on the first heavy day like a neighborhood's own hieroglyphs. Night rituals keep morning honest. Before bed, someone widens the little door through the berm at the corner. Someone brooms the stoop one last time so the 6 a.m. dog walker finds texture underfoot. Someone checks the downspout elbow and nudges it an inch so the drip line misses the path. A tub of grit moves into the vestibule where no one will forget it under a new drift. The last coffee grounds of the day go into the compost, not onto the snow, ground stain. They don't grip. It's a quiet choreography. A minute here, a sweep there, and the block sleeps ready. Cars can be winter's villains or allies. Park a foot from the crosswalk and your bumper becomes a snow fence. Leave the corner clear and the wind can carry away what gravity can't. In odd even parking schemes, the decision to comply is not bureaucratic. It is pedestrian. A plow that can reach the curb can also leave a gentle edge that your shovel will love tomorrow. If you must brush your car, brush it into the street where the next pass can carry it, not onto the sidewalk where a passerby will wear it. And clear your roof. Falling snow at the first stop sign is winter's least funny joke. Children and elders make the standard, not the exception. A block that is comfortable for a child carrying a violin case and an elder pulling a small wheel tote is a block that is good for everyone else. That standard writes tiny rules. Keep the curb cuts wide. Keep the bus pad visible. Cut the windrow doors early. Brush the tactile bumps. Don't leave the last inch of slush to become tomorrow's glass. The child and the elder are not special cases. They are the measure of the block's decency. Finally, there's the diplomacy of help. Winter offers 100 chances to be usefully nosy. Can I widen your cut? Want a scoop of sand? I'll take your side of the drain this week if you'll take mine next. Pride survives this. Pride enjoys it. On a block with good winter manners, gratitude moves faster than rumor, and rumor slows down because it has nowhere safe to stick. The walk becomes a place for eye contact, not acrobatics. By late afternoon, a well-kept residential street looks ordinary, which is the highest winter compliment. Piles are low and logical. Crossings are obvious. Drains are speaking. Steps are dull, not shiny. Bins are staged like polite guests. You notice that you didn't notice the walking, that your body trusted the ground without asking permission. This is neighborhood triumph, 1,000 small rituals braided into a single steady path. Walkability is only as honest as its slowest step. In winter, that means designing every pass of the shovel and every turn of the small plow for people who roll. Tap, guide, push, and balance. Wheelchairs and walkers. White canes and guide dogs. Strollers and delivery hand trucks. Bad knees and careful ankles. A city that keeps its curb cuts and crosswalks clean is doing more than snow control. It is translating dignity into inches. Curb cuts are small theatres of friction and slope. Their geometry is gentle on purpose, a fan of concrete that lowers the sidewalk to meet the street without asking wheels to leap. Snow loves to colonize exactly that fan. Windrows drop there, drift teeth grow there, and melt likes to pause there as if a ramp were a saucer. So the winter plan gives these triangles first rights. Narrow push shovels, no wider than the ramp, make precise paths. Wide scoops come after, angling snow to the tree lawn or a designated pocket, never back into the crossing where it will refreeze as a low, sneering barricade. If the block has no lawn, snow is stacked in low. Saw-toothed berms along the curb. Kept below knee height so sightlines stay generous for anyone seated, small, or simply careful. Tactile paving, those familiar bumps, needs to be a language, not an archaeological find. A broom restores their relief after each pass so canes can sing their Morse code. Curb here, cross here, wait here. A metal scraper is used lightly if ice films the bumps, just enough to break the bond without shaving the dots into smooth lies. Crews learn to read the grid with gloved fingers, not eyes. If you can feel it, you can trust it. Where tactile plates are old or loose, a winter note goes to spring crews. Snow is the season that reveals which pieces of the sidewalk dictionary need a new page. Crosswalks themselves are legal promises painted on stone. When snow hides the zebra, people cross wherever their feet guess, and guesswork under traffic is a poor plan. So the first lull in any storm triggers the zebra ritual. Cut the stripes back into view. A gentle scraping along the paint, enough to expose white, not to polish it, tells drivers and walkers the same thing. Here is the agreement. Center medians and refuge islands get extra patience. Wind cuts little shark teeth into their upwind edges. Crews answer with a tamp strip of cinders there and a quick broom across the top, leaving a dry place where a person can pause without their cane tip skittering or their wheels slipping. Audible push buttons, APS, for signals are winter's small reliquaries of attention. They must be reachable without a ballet. No wall of snow at the pole, no glass at its base. A narrow shovel cuts a crescent around each post. A broom and towel wipe the buttons so gloves don't slide. On nights of freezing mist, a dab of de-icer on a cloth keeps the casing free of sly glaze. The idea is not luxury. It's legibility. A person who cannot see the light needs to hear and feel it without hazard. The choreography of plows is written around these needs. Street plows come first, shouldering heavy snow into windrows. Immediately after, a crossing team follows with narrow machines and hand tools to carve doors through the ridge at every crosswalk and bus stop. Those doors are cut wide, at least as wide as a wheelchair with elbows, often a stroller with mittens, so a turn is graceful, not crabbed. If signals are staggered or skewed, the cut follows the actual path, not the theoretical line on a map. You can tell a generous city by the way its openings line up with where real feet and real wheels actually go. Not all curb cuts are standard. Winter must make room for custom. In old districts, a curb flare might be abrupt or tilted. In new ones, a raised crosswalk might carry the sidewalk straight across the street like a small bridge. Each geometry asks a different kindness. Abrupt flares want more grit. Raised crossings want the edges feathered so street plows don't carve a trench at the join. Where a driveway interrupts a corner, Crews push snow to the far side of the apron and keep the sidewalk line continuous so a walker doesn't have to step into the driveway's angling ice to stay on course. Hospitals, schools, senior centres, and transit hubs get priority not because they are fancy but because their thresholds collect the most fragile steps. A winter map marks them in a quiet highlighter, double passes for curb cuts, early door cuts through windrows, and extra checks at dawn. The school's Kisango Lane is kept humble but unambiguous. The pediatric clinic's north-facing ramp is treated as if someone will be carrying a newborn on it at any hour, because someone might. The senior centre's plaza is dusted with more grit than looks elegant because elegance is not the point. Guide dogs and canes teach crews subtle lessons. Dogs hesitate before shiny patches. Canes tattletale on thin films no one else notices. So the night shift learns to dust the upwind edge of islands and the downwind lip of ramps. In snow that falls past bedtime, a keeper walks with a cane for 5 minutes and listens to the taps. Where the rhythm stutters, they leave a whisper of cinders. That sound check is as useful as any thermometer. Buses and wheelchairs are allies when the curb is a mess. The bus operator kneels the coach. The cut is made where the kneel meets the pad. The door lands on texture, not on pretense. A second pass widens the pad to allow a chair to turn without choreography. An extra slice through the windrow connects pad to zebra so the transfer feels like a sentence with commas, not a leap across a blank. The snow that comes off the pad is walked to a snow pocket, not left beside the door to ooze back into trouble. This seems fussy. It's simply literacy in the grammar of movement. Delivery hand trucks and strollers use the same kindnesses. A curb cut cleared to its edges lets a parent push with one hand while the other manages a zipper. A narrow trench from a loading zone's lip keeps a stack of boxes from becoming a comedy. Winter respect is modular. A good cut serves 4 species of wheels at once. Refreeze pretends to be neutral but plays favourites. It visits shadows and north faces more often. So the evening patrols start at corners that never see noon sun. They wipe the APS button, brush the tactile plate, cut the tiny gutter to the grate, dust the upwind tooth on the island, and move on. A minute per corner multiplied by 100 corners equals an hour that removes an ambulance run. This math is a secret winter does not advertise but rewards lavishly. Communication keeps priorities steady without turning them into slogans. A shared map, digital for crews. Printed for counters, shows which curb cuts are red, steep, shaded, near essential doors. Which islands collect teeth, which signals ice at base, which bus pads need double. After a storm, a short log records corner gripes that spring will fix, a sunken paver here, a misaimed downspout there, a heaved slab that traps water. Winter reveals. Spring repairs. Next winter thanks, retail blocks pitch in when they are taught the specifics. A flyer in plain language says, keep the ramp as wide as your doorway. Don't build a heroic snow fort across the crossing. Shovel to the APS post. Sweep the bumps so canes can read. Use sand where shadows linger. Place your sandwich board so it doesn't invade the ramp's fan. Most shopkeepers already do this. Clarity makes them better at it. A tub of grit with a scoop by the door is a handshake with every passerby who needs that last sprinkle. Sometimes it is the small, nearly invisible choices that carry the day. A crew member who brushes flakes off the little arrow on a push button so a gloved thumb finds it. A neighbour who notices that the door through a windrow has narrowed and widens it without clapping for themselves. A student who learns that one extra sweep across the tactile bumps helps someone they will never meet. These acts feel unremarkable. They add up to a city that walks the talk. By late afternoon, when the light turns thin and the gusts veer around buildings, you can judge a winter city by watching one intersection. Do people hesitate at the ramp? Do wheels stall at the windrow? Do canes chatter like they're guessing? Or do bodies simply proceed, down, across, up, as if the snow had remembered to be polite? In the good version, the crossing feels inevitable. It is the result of design drawn on the ground, curb cuts kept open to their edges, stripes revealed, buttons reachable, islands kind, and the quiet conviction that the slowest step sets the standard for everyone. Night is when winter edits the day's work. The sun goes home, the blue deepens, and all the tidy paths that felt cooperative at dusk begin testing their loyalties. Melt slinks back toward shadow, breath turns to lace, and a certain hush falls that can either be welcome or treacherous depending on how well a city remembers its night manners. Walkability after dark is not louder. It is more attentive. The night shift does not fight snow. It keeps yesterday's water from becoming today's bruise. Refreeze begins in thin places. It starts on manhole lids and metal plates, where conduction steals warmth faster than stone can lend it. It starts at the seam of bridge decks and overpasses where air wraps the slab on all sides and politely removes degrees. It starts beneath awnings where drips take their time, and at the foot of downspouts that spent the afternoon behaving. Crews who know these microclimates map them in their heads like constellations. They move without hurry, carrying small tools and modest cures, a scoop of sand, a hand broom, a narrow scraper, a flashlight that can read texture. Black ice earns its name by refusing spectacle. Under sodium lamps and soft LEDs, it looks like ordinary pavement that has been paying attention. The trick is the sound and the gait, a footfall that rings a little higher, a cane tip that sings rather than thunks. Night crews learn to listen to sidewalks as much as they look at them. When they hear a squeak more than a scrape under the broom, they pause, dust a pinch of grit, and watch the surface change from mirror to velvet. The point isn't to melt. It's to make friction. Anti-icing belongs to this hour. Earlier in the season, crews may have laid a brine, a light pre-wet that politely keeps water from welding itself to stone. After dark, that brine strategy turns into spot care, a low-splash spray bottle on the steep, shaded ramp beside the clinic, a ladle of beet blend or magnesium solution where the alley mouth tips into a sidewalk, a wetting at the foot of a pedestrian bridge so the next pass of a broom doesn't skate. The quantities are humble because the goal is a thin, even film, not a puddle that will become tomorrow's problem. Lighting changes its job description at night. It is no longer there to make streets charming. It is there to make surfaces legible. Warm color helps, less glare off the pale, less dazzle in the eye, and a consistent rhythm of light keeps pupils from panicking between pools of dark. Shop windows do unexpected civic duty here. The glow of a bakery's case softens shadows at a curb cut. The lantern in a florist's awning keeps a tiny ramp honest. Even holiday string lights contribute, not by brightness but by telling a passerby, people are near, and attention is awake. Transit stops become small theaters of reassurance. A night crew cuts a clean rectangle from curb to shelter and then dusts the bus pad with a salt sand blend, feathering it outward so a person who steps off into the world has one step to think, not three. Shelters sweat on the inside when breath meets cold glass, and that drip wants to settle where ankles do, so a rag lives in the corner, and someone wipes low before the next arrival. The tactile strip on train platforms earns special care, a quick brush to raise the bumps, a dry cloth to banish the sheen that turns white stick taps into question marks. Stairs and ramps are the night's honesty tests. Rails, especially metal ones, cool faster than courtesy. A small bottle of food-safe de-icer and a towel turn a slick grip into a trustworthy one. On stone treads, the rule is simple, no polish. A broom, then a handful of grit. Landings get a little extra. Turns get a little more. The difference is invisible from a distance and decisive underfoot. Where a shortcut staircase slices between buildings. The night team knows the foot traffic it saves and gives it a minute that will save an hour in ambulances. Deliveries continue after dark, and their routes tell you where to look. A loading dock that breathes out warm air can rework a sidewalk into a condensation rink. A door that swings outward pushes snow subtly toward the public path. The answer is choreography, not scolding, a rubber mat under the condensation lip. A quick squeegee pass after the cart returns. A shallow channel cut toward a drain. A good night does not ask a person pushing a hand truck to be a gymnast. It smooths the corners of their job. Signals and signs help without becoming scenery. Small, folding caution signs appear by habit at the right spots, bottom of a notorious ramp, edge of a glassy plaza, the mouth of a shortcut alley, and then vanish again by morning so the city doesn't grow numb to the warning. Reflective whiskers, no taller than a boot toe, sprout on berm edges to keep people from stepping into a low drift disguised as nothing. Cones are used sparingly. Better to fix a hazard than frame it. Yet in a true glaze, freezing rain turning everyone into ballet dancers against their will, a line of cones can draw anew. Safer path across a plaza in 20 seconds of mercy, night also belongs to custodians and supers, whose work touches thresholds more often than streets. A building that stays walkable is a building that breathes well. Warm vestibules exhale. Cold air inhales. Water condenses where they shake hands. Mats drink it if they are thick enough and wrung often. A second mat at the second door doubles the odds. A bucket charged with a teaspoon of de-icer keeps mop water from becoming a trap. At the hinge between outside and in. The smallest grace is a towel hung ready on the push bar that loves to collect frost at 3 in the morning. Some hazards are quiet and far from lamps. Footbridges over rail lines and rivers gather black ice the way windows gather condensation. The fix is equal parts architecture and habit. Textured treads baked into the deck when the bridge is built. A night route that always includes the bridge even when there's nothing else to do. A small bin of grit at either end for anyone to borrow a scoop from. A city invites its citizens into night maintenance this way and finds, to its pleasant surprise, that many accept. Communication changes tone after dark. Radios grow softer. Updates grow more precise. North face of Maple pedestrian bridge glazed, treated. Clinic's west ramp wiped and dusted. Wind shaping teeth on 8th Avenue refuge, cinders placed upwind. The night shift speaks as if to a sleeping house, calm, factual, confident. Panic makes bad decisions. The soundtrack of good winter nights is consideration. There is a kind of beauty, too, that belongs only to this shift. A flashlight beam catching the glitter of grit like tiny stars. The hollow thump of a boot on safe, textured ground. The little breath clouds that prove the air is cold but not cruel. Neighbors returning late notice none of the work and feel all of the benefit. They lean a little less, walk a little faster, trust the next step. In a city that keeps its night patrols humble, the sidewalks look like they took care of themselves, which is the highest compliment maintenance can earn when morning returns. The night crew leaves traces no one will see as separate from the day. Drain grates that aren't armored in glass. Rails that don't bite. Crosswalks with a dry stripe. A bridge deck that is simply ordinary. The city wakes to an unremarkable safety that took dozens of quiet decisions to compose. And as the first coffee lids lift and the first school bell thinks about clearing its throat, the pavement is already on the walker's side. When the snow eases into that hush between bands, winter changes tactics. The city is no longer catching snow. It's escorting it off the stage without letting it trip anyone on the way out. This is the hour when sidewalks look half-solved, white along the edges, grey in the lane of footsteps, little ponds thinking about becoming glass. Walkability now depends less on muscle than on foresight measured in inches. Where the water will run. Where it will pause, where it will turn mean if you leave it for an hour. The first rule in the lull is to make exits. Snow likes to wall itself into tidy fortifications along curbs and corners. Water, unlike people, doesn't like to jump. Crews take narrow shovels and carve doors through windrows at each crosswalk, then a shallow trench from the lowest corner to the nearest open grate. That trench is not deep. 2 inches is a kindness, but it is continuous. A break in the middle becomes tomorrow's unsolvable rink. Where the grate sits under a plume of slush, a quick scrape reveals the metal's grid and a satisfying swallow. You can hear it, a small conversation between city and sky. Okay, go this way. On sloped blocks, the lull is geography class. Melt will choose the fast lane if you let it. It will also choose trouble. A careful pass with a push broom steers thin water away from lips of stairs and the foot of ramps. At mid-block curb cuts, someone flicks away the last feather of slush so a wheelchair doesn't become a boat. The best broom work is wrist-deep and unhurried, pushing away only what wants to travel, leaving a textured, damp sidewalk that dries in patchwork under shy sun. Polishing a sidewalk to perfection at noon is vanity. Making it predictable by dusk is grace. Small tools get their moment. A trenching spade lives at the corner now. A gutter scoop rides in a 5-gallon bucket. A stiff brush with short bristles scrubs the tactile bumps at curb ramps so canes can continue their Morse code. In places with brick or stone, a metal-edged scraper whispers down mortar lines to break the relationship between slush and groove. On smooth concrete, a squeegee, the humble kind used by window washers, pulls thin glaze away from doorways without scattering grit that will later grind underfoot. The lull is domestic. Wipe, nudge, tidy. Thank salt and grit become conversationalists rather than protagonists. Where melt runs thin and honest, let it go. No need to season it. Where a shadowed doorway breeds a narrow tongue of ice, a teaspoon of de-icer followed by a broom's worth of sand turns hazard into texture. On south-facing walks, chemistry is mostly wasted. Friction and the sun will do the work if the surface is clean enough to absorb heat. On blocks that face north, pellets earn their keep, but only in the spots where water insists on lodging. At the heel of a ramp, beneath a downspout. In the hollow where a paver settled over the years into a very small bowl, downspouts deserve a chapter of their own during the lull. Many a city has learned that the handsomest building can be the clumsiest neighbor if a spout throws melt across the public way. Good supers fit extensions before the season. Simple elbows that lead water to a tree lawn or into a bed of river stones that sip rather than splash. In the lull, the elbow is checked. Still aimed? Still clear. A frozen beard on a spout is a warning. Chip a channel, save a fall. Where extensions aren't possible, a short ramp of packed snow can steer the flow aside like a tiny causeway. Crude, effective. Friendly, plazas and wide corners ask for a different rhythm than narrow sidewalks. Their ice is less about compression, more about puddle. Operators in these spaces trade blades for bristled rotary brooms that tickle water away without burnishing it. A dusting of cinders paints a wide sketch of traction so that people drift naturally towards safer lines of travel. Benches are brushed, not for comfort but for drainage. A pile of snow on a slap bench becomes a stubborn drip that feeds tomorrow's slick right where an ankle will choose to pass. Trash cans are rolled a little to break the ice necklace that loves to form beneath their lips. Bus stops and crosswalk islands are the Lulls' main stage. The goal is to keep momentum continuous. A person leaves the bus, steps onto a clean pad, walks across the zebra without meeting a moat, and reaches the far curb without climbing a miniature cliff. Achieving that feels like luck to the passerby. It is actually the math of inches and timing. A second pass widens the bus pad. An extra cut through the windrow keeps the crossing connected. A shallow trench hides under the slush like a secret path. If a bus clock tells you the lull will end in 90 minutes, that is exactly enough time to make 3 crossings feel inevitable rather than tentative. Bikes and deliveries stay in the story, too. A lull is the perfect moment to brush a protected lane's inside edge so it doesn't become a gutter that freezes. Delivery zones get a narrow trench out to the travel lane so a hand truck doesn't discover the ocean in the curb. Loading dock ramps, backstage to walkability, get a quick scratch and a cup of grit because the person pushing a stack of boxes has less spare attention than the pedestrian and just as much need for footing stairs. And handrails are winter's honesty tests. Every city has a beloved shortcut with steps that save 5 minutes and cost 10 in gravity if neglected. The lull gives you time to treat these as small theatres of success. A fast pass clears the treads. A glove with a rag of vegetable oil rubs the rail so melt doesn't knit itself into a skin. A sprinkle of grit on the landings writes the script. Up, pause, up, safe. Signs are unnecessary when the body reads a good set of stairs. It simply trusts, refreeze, cunningly, begins long before the temperature drops. It begins wherever water lingers without purpose. So the lull is a chase, but a gentle one. Find the lingering. Low brick threshold. Squeegee it. Slight dip at the alley mouth. Broom it downhill. The heel groove of a habitual shortcut across a planter edge. Fill it with a handful of snow and pat it flat so it stops collecting melt into a trap. These are minute acts. They are the difference between a city that wakes to sparkle and one that wakes to apologies. Communication keeps the lull from turning into 100 private improvisations. A short message, radio, text thread, shared map, helps crews converge on the right corners at the right time. Open drains on 12th now. Windrows on State Street next. Clinic block, cut doors in both directions. Library plaza, broom only. No salt, south sun incoming. The tone remains calm, neighbourly. Winter is less a battle than a group project, and lulls are its editing passes. Shops, schools, and homes rehearse their end-of-day routines to meet the refreeze half a step early. Mats are changed once more to banish the last sogginess. A final quick broom outside the door sends thin water to the trench. The grit tub near the threshold gets a top off so the dawn crew won't hunt for it. A custodian peeks at the north exit even if the south door sees more feet. A teacher walks the block's corner ramp and nudges a finger of slush away because she knows the bus stop will be busy at first bell. These grace notes do not announce themselves, but they are part of the music.by twilight. The city's edges darken into blues and violets, and the amber of windows makes the melt look almost friendly. You can tell from the sound that the lull has been used well. Drains murmur instead of burp. Crosswalks thump under heels rather than squeal. Canes tap at normal speed. The storm might return or might not. Either way, the ground that will greet tomorrow is being composed now, into surfaces that remember the human scale when the thermometer forgets it. And the oddest pleasure of all is noticing what you didn't notice. No moat at the corner, no shiny tongue beneath the awning, no sheepish detour into the street. The city kept its promise quietly. A city that stays walkable in winter moves in layers, not lunges. When the first proper flakes begin their slow, diagonal handwriting across streetlights, you can almost hear the sidewalks exhale. Here we go, then. The plan that looked like lists and tidy corners a few hours ago becomes a soft rhythm. Brush, scrape, scatter. Rest, watch, repeat. It is not drama. It is housekeeping at scale, a choreography that treats falling snow the way patient people treat dust. Don't scold it. Just don't let it settle. The first pass matters most, and it is gentler than outsiders expect. Crews and caretakers do not wait for inches. They sweep powder before it learns compaction, skimming the surface like turning a page. A broom is often better than a shovel in this early hour. It keeps texture in the pavement so feet find purchase. On blocks with brick or stone, a wide push broom rides over joints without snagging, leaving a thin stipple that behaves like sandpaper beneath a boot. Where the flakes thicken, the tool changes. Flat shovel with a rubber edge for smooth concrete. Steel-edged for old, pitted slabs that need persuasion. The rule is simple and old. Remove what you can before chemistry is asked to help. Chemistry arrives as a whisper, not a dump. A handful tossed from a scoop, never a fist. The point is not to melt a blizzard. The point is to break the bond between ice and stone, to keep the next pass honest. On corners where the curb cut faces north and sulks, pellets go down first. On sunny, south-facing runs, elbow grease earns more than salt ever could. Shopkeepers learn the grain of their own frontage. Where the awning drip likes to draw a sly ribbon across the walk. Where footsteps gather at the door and need snow into glass. A cappuccino tin becomes a perfect shaker. A child's sand pail becomes a grit bucket. A measuring habit replaces the impulse to cure with excess. Plows do their work without making pedestrians pay for it. The small sidewalk units move like thoughtful animals. Heads low, blades angled to feed snow into tree lawns and buffer strips rather than back across crosswalks. Where there is no lawn, they stage snow in neat, low berms that can be lifted later, keeping sightlines open so an adult can see a child, and a child can see a crossing signal. At intersections, operators feather the blade early so they don't leave a wintry speed bump exactly where a cane or stroller needs a kind surface. When the street plows come through and leave their heavy windrows, a second wave of crews trails them with scoop sand. Narrow plows to carve pedestrian. Openings, little doors through the ridge. So the city remains continuous for feet instead of becoming a maze of white. Walls. Crosswalks receive the most careful manners. Their paint is both legal statement and psychological promise, covering it for long teachers' confusion. So teams cut the zebra back into view, not with theatre but with pride. A gentle scraping reveals stripes. A scatter of grit invites heels to behave. On refuge islands, where wind teeth grow, crews tamp a little pile of cinders into the upwind lip to blunt the drift's edge. The next gust distributes traction at precisely the place toes land. Transit breathes with the snowfall. At bus stops, the first pass clears a path from curb to shelter. The second pass widens it so two people can trade places without stepping into slush. Benches get a respectful swipe, not to make them pristine, just to make them plausible. At train platforms, staff keep the yellow tactile strip honest. A broom restores its bumps after each dusting so canes can sing their small, safe song. Bike lanes that are promised year-round receive their proof here. A compact tractor with a narrow blade and a bristled broom. A human who knows to lift slush from drain grates so the melt has somewhere to travel when the grey hour arrives. Wind tries to edit, and the city edits back with softness. Along the long face of a block, drifting snow seeks fences and rails to become a private dune. A perforated screen tied loosely to a construction fence breaks that impulse, scissoring the gust so it drops what it carries before the sidewalk becomes a hostage. Where storefronts meet sky, awnings earn their wages. A push-pole waits by the door, and a clerk steps out at intervals to coax new piles to fall while the walk is clear and a warning word can be given. Better to choose the avalanche than to surprise a passerby with the colourful version. People become part of the cadence. Tenants take a turn on their stoop, not once but hourly. The effort is modest each time, which is the whole idea. A neighbour widens the narrow stretch by the vacant lot because no one else will. And what is the use of a clear yard if the city stumbles between yards? Children drag a kid-sized shovel with delighted seriousness and learn a civic truth their textbooks never quite manage. Shared ground is best kept in small, repeated kindnesses. Where an elder's steps show hesitation, someone lifts the tub of grit and sprinkles ahead of her without making a show. These gestures accumulate. The block feels held rather than harried. Inside, buildings adjust their own cadence to match the snows. Mats are shaken more often. Mop buckets are changed before they turn into grey suggestion. A little sign appears by the door. Step, wipe, step. The sort of poetry that keeps floors from becoming ponds. Two rugs meet like a dovetail. Bristles outside to scrub, rubber inside to dry. The staircase from basement to storefront, used by the person carrying bags of sand, gets a quick scrape as well. Nobody wants a safe sidewalk that feeds an unsafe stair as temperatures hover near freezing. The work turns from removal to conversation. Scrape, then step back. Watch the glaze forming at the threshold of a crosswalk. Scatter a salt sand blend just enough to keep crystals talking to water. In deeper cold, the conversation goes the other way. De-ice a size and refuses to work quickly. The answer is friction and thin layers. Two quick scrapes an hour apart instead of one hero's heave at midnight. The goal is never to make sidewalks dry mid-storm. The goal is to keep them legible, textured, and predictable underfoot. Corners with drains get special attention because the future is already factoring into the present. A small trench is kept open across the feather of ploughed snow at the gutter so that, when the lull comes and melt begins, the trickle runs under the windrow to the mouth rather than turning the sidewalk into a moat. A 5-minute act now erases an hour's chipping later. The person who does this work rarely boasts. The satisfaction is quiet and arrives tomorrow as a sidewalk that simply doesn't misbehave. All the while, the city listens. Radios carry not orders so much as updates. North-facing block at the clinic glazing. Second pass needed. Bus island at 5th clear. Wind building teeth. Dropping cinders. Bridge deck broomed. Watch for refreeze after the 4 p.m. lull. The tone is friendly, not martial. Snow is not an enemy. It is a condition. The shared goal is to keep the human scale, feet, canes, strollers, deliveries, moving as if winter were a mood, not a closure. By the time the storm pauses, the sidewalks do not look perfect. They look cared for. Tracks remain, but they lie in shallow relief rather than frozen relief. Crosswalks are visible. Curb cuts are shallow. Bus stops feel possible. The city has stayed ahead of the bond that turns fresh snow into a treacherous sheet. And because of that, The next round, whether it is more snow, a little freezing mist, or a shy winter sun, will be met by surfaces that are ready to cooperate. The work has been small and frequent, which is the magic. You can feel it in your ankles. The ground helps. Winter does not begin with snow. It begins with lists. Before the first flake considers your city, someone in a dim garage runs a gloved hand along a row of shovel handles to feel for splinters. A mechanic leans into the warm belly of a small sidewalk plow and listens for a bearing that might complain later. In a municipal yard, bags of sand sit like tame, quiet dunes, and a pallet of de-icer rests under a top that snaps gently when the wind remembers to test knots. The sidewalks are still dry, the crosswalk paint still crisp, but the choreography has already started. Small, almost invisible steps that will keep feet honest when the world turns white. The map for walkers is drawn now, not in January. Crews walk curb ramps and check that the lips are cut clean. The tactile pavers are still raised enough to be read by shoe and cane under a skim of powder. Someone tests drainage at the corner that always thinks about freezing first. Another tilts a bucket into a stubborn grate to see whether the swallow is smooth or sulky. A city that means to keep people moving learns to read its cold weather in advance, like you check the stair in your own house that always asks for the shallower step on storefront streets. The plan is a braided thing. What the city does. What shopkeepers do. What neighbors do for one another. Notices appear, polite reminders that say the first shoveled width is a promise to strangers, that snow belongs piled in the tree lawn or the reveal at the curb cut, not back into the plow's lane. A roll of bright tape waits for the sandwich board that someone will forget to bring inside. A broom hangs beside a shovel because the last dusting is really a sweeping, not a heave. In apartment lobbies, a small tub of grits sits by the door with a scoop like a ladle. It is not heroic to use it, only kind. The debate about salt and its cousins is renewed each year the way families debate recipes. Sodium chloride is cheap and eager but unkind to roots and pores. Calcium chloride works in lower temperatures but leaves sidewalks damp longer. Magnesium chloride speaks softly to concrete but sighs at budgets. Some blocks experiment with beet juice blends that stain the snow like faint tea. Others sprinkle corn grit or volcanic cinders for traction, accepting that the sweepers will have more to do in April. The outcome is not ideology but temperament. What keeps ankles steady without teaching the spring to taste like brine? In colder neighborhoods, the answer is rhythm more than chemistry. Frequent scraping before compaction wins over a single dramatic dump of pellets. Lighting learns winter manners too. A lamppost that was adequate for summer's slow twilight becomes shy under slap-back glare from snow. Warm bulbs are chosen where faces pass close. Glare is kept out of eyes at crosswalks. Little upward tilt is corrected so a path is lit without turning the whole sidewalk into a pale, confusing mirror. Window lights do civic work. Bakery glass and corner groceries bleed amber into the blue evening, and the spill gives walkers an extra step of confidence. People linger an inch nearer the buildings where it's brightest, and the whole flow becomes tidier, like a river that remembers its banks. Buses, trains, bikes, every mode has its winter home in this map. Platforms are checked for the thin seam where melted footprints refreeze into mischief. A bus stop's bench is moved slightly so plow windrows won't teach elders to climb. Bicycle lanes, when they keep their dignity through January, earn it through clear edges and fair priorities. Keep the parking lane trimmed so the windrow doesn't invade. Keep the dividers from becoming snow fences. The plow operators, those quiet winter composers, carry copies of these priorities not as commandments but as cues in a song they already know by heart. Then there is wind. Cities have their own weather, made of streets and stone and the stubborn habits of air. In summer, it is a rumor. In winter, it is an editor with a red pencil. Wind scours one sidewalk to bone while a parallel block drowns in drift. It carves little teeth at the upwind edge of crosswalk islands where the first toe might catch. The response is architectural and modest. A line of evergreen shrubs that bends the gust. A low perforated screen that breaks its tantrum. A rack of bike hoops that becomes, in January, a wind sifter as much as a stand for frames. Storefront awnings double as snow governors, training roof fall to land where a shovel can reach it and where no one's collar is waiting. Building supers and custodians conduct their own rehearsals. The first step receives the first mat. A coir rug lives outside to trap clots. A rubber runner lives inside to finish the job, so that melted snow doesn't become an indoor rink. Buckets for mop water get a little salt to keep their kindness from freezing at the threshold. A rag's worth of vegetable oil wipes the hinges of the sidewalk gate that always sticks below freezing. Because the best shoveling in the world is wasted if the gate will not swing and the pile cannot be placed in the right spot. All this preparation is slow, nearly boring, which is precisely why it succeeds. Cities that keep winter walkable do not aim for heroics so much as for rehearsal. Routes are agreed. The small plough passes the school first because small boots trip most easily. The street corner near the clinic gets a double visit because the curb cut their faces north and sulks. The footbridge is shoveled by neighbours who like the bragging rights of a path they can claim as theirs. The choreography deepens into culture. When we pass a stretch that is already clear, we widen it one shovel's width more. When we meet a stretch that has been neglected, we do not curse first. We spread grit, then grumble. When the forecast finally changes its voice from maybe to soon, the city's pulse lowers, not spikes. Trash cans are tucked in so trucks can reach the curb. Loading zones are cleared so ploughs have places to breathe. Cars slip to one side in odd even agreements that keep noise from lasting all night. The first flakes arrive as scouts, and the first responses are gentle. A broom for the powder that thinks it can settle without notice. A scrape for the heel prints that think they can harden into ruin. There will be bigger moments, yes, but the character of the season is set here. In this softness, the decision to stay a step ahead. To avoid the costly work of breaking what you could have simply brushed away to if you walk through the evening just before the first proper storm. You can feel the city's preparation like a bass note. The sidewalks are dry, the corners swept clean, the drains open, the lights warm, the grit waiting in its tub, the shovels leaning with their faces toward the door. You can hear the small vehicles humming somewhere beyond the next block, the test passes that prove belts and blades are ready. People move with a tiny bit more purpose, yet without dread. The city appears to be doing nothing, and in that apparent nothing is the entire art. Do the modest things early so the dramatic things do not become necessary. Walkability in winter is not a miracle. It is a pact. The pact is always signed in advance, by planners with their inventories, by mechanics with their wrenches, by shopkeepers with their brooms, by neighbours with their tubs of grit, by the quiet agreement that feet will have first right of way even when the sky insists on disagreeing. When the storm comes, and it will, on its own schedule, the sidewalks will already be on our side. They will be ready to accept our footprints without making us pay for them twice. The most ordinary car can become winter's biggest piece of furniture. Park it a foot from the corner and it turns into a snow fence. Leave it astride a curb cut and it becomes a lock on a whole block's mobility. Winter walkability depends on a quiet pact between parking rules and plough routes, an agreement measured in bumpers and inches that decides whether windrows become walls or mere scenery. The goal is simple: keep the walking line continuous even when the street must store snow. Odd-even parking looks bureaucratic on a calendar and merciful on the ground. By shifting cars to one side of the street for a set window, the plough can reach the curb, make a clean pass, and leave a gentle edge that a neighbour's shovel can love. The second night, the other side gets its turn. The rhythm prevents what cities dread: a narrow chute of rutted snow for cars and two parallel fortresses for pedestrians. When the rule works, windrows sit long and low along tree lawns. Curb cuts are not buried as collateral damage. Crosswalk doors are easier to cut because the ridge is only a ridge, not a cliff. Corners are delicate and deserve choreography. A bumper too close to the zebra narrows sightlines for small people and seated ones. It also catches snow and breeds teeth on the upwind side. Good signage is specific: no parking 20 feet from crosswalk, year-round. And winter enforcement is gentle but firm. Cones appear during storms to mark the keep clear arc. Ploughs feather the blade early at the approach so a low berm drifts outward rather than inward toward the curb cut. After the street plough passes, a small crew arrives with trenching spades to cut doors through the new ridge at all crossings. Those doors are cut wide, a stroller's width plus a mitten. 2. Set the standard for the next person who widens them again in. Passing. Hydrants and bus stops are winter's no-go circles for parking and snow alike. A hydrant buried in charm becomes a panic in heat. A bus pad buried becomes a ballet for fragile ankles. Marking hydrant clear zones with tall reflective whiskers pays dividends when snow stacks high and maps go fuzzy. At bus stops, a sawtooth berm along the travel lane keeps slush from oozing back onto the pad. A narrow trench leads to the nearest grate. Operators kneel the coach to texture, not to shine. The cars that respect these little theatres make the whole block more legible. Snow storage is an art that begins with restraint. Not every inch needs a pile. Low, long berms along tree lawns feed roots and keep sightlines honest. Stacks at curb extensions are shaped like sleeping seals, rounded, not jagged, so refreeze sloughs off as a trickle rather than a sheet. Do not heap snow at the throat of a curb cut. Do not crown it at the heel of a ramp. Do not wall it across a bike corral. Loading zones make better snow pantries than crosswalk corners, and mid-block pockets absorb bulk better than doorsteps. A city that maps preferred piles ahead of time saves shovels from arguments later. Downtown blocks require different instrument, removal. When sidewalks pinch between storefront and curb, or when parking demand refuses to budge, the only honest answer is to haul snow away. Night crews load with small buckets, not hero shoves, so they don't break curb lips or scrape tactile plates into silence. Trucks stage in a short, tidy train. Spotters protect the crosswalks. The motion is unhurried. In larger storms, a melter idles at a yard, turning what would be 100 truck miles into a few hours of steam under watchful eyes. The sequence matters. First cut crosswalk doors, then clear bus pads and hydrants, then bite the berm down to a modest edge. Only then does the theatre of hauling begin. Alleys and service lanes can rescue corners if they are treated like streets. A single pass with a small plough along the alley mouth creates a relief valve for snow storage. Businesses push their windrows to that mouth rather than to the zebra. Delivery hand trucks find a clean line. Pedestrians are spared the dramatic hop a bad corner demands. Clear alley corners also protect drains, which are the lungs winter needs at noon. Communication turns rules into courtesy. A short, clear message works better than a warning horn. Oddside parking Wednesday 8p 8a. Curb-to-curb plough. Crosswalks reopened by 7a. A little map helps. Arrows showing which side moves when, stars where removal will happen, dots where drains must be found by neighbours if crews can't reach them in time. Equity is part of the language. Translate the notice. Knock at doors where notices don't get read. Pair enforcement with help, a shovel loan, a quick widening of the windrow door when a car must stay for a reason that a tow truck doesn't need to debate. Plough operators are winter's tailors. The street is their fabric. The blade is a hem. They aim for a neat reveal between travel lane and parking lane so the berm sits predictably, not randomly. They lift a half-inch early at crosswalk approaches to avoid leaving a sharp ridge the height of a boot sole. They avoid creating plough shadows behind parked cars, those triangle wedges that harden into traps, by taking a second short pass later when more curb is exposed. Where curb extensions pinch, they run a narrower blade and kiss the granite rather than shoulder it. The compliments they covet are the quiet ones. Looked like it cleared itself. Valets, rideshare, and quick-stop spaces can either be allies or chaos multipliers. A valet stand that insists on curbside staging during a storm forces a new berm where feet belong. The kind of choreography is to stage in a pull-in or alley, to treat the curb cut like a shrine, and to teach drivers to pull forward to the dry stripe rather than stopping where a door wants to land. Rideshare pickup zones gain a laminated winter card. Stop past the zebra. Doors curbside. 30 seconds. Hazard lights optional. Courtesy mandatory. The tone is neighborhood, not scold. Driveways are tiny plow routes with big stakes. The last shovels tilt to sides whether the sidewalk inherits a 6 p.m. refreeze sheet. The rule is generous. Push snow to the lawn edge, not onto the walk. Leave a low notch where the driveway meets the curb so street melt has a way past. And after the car drives out, Give the sidewalk 2 broom passes to erase the tire polish that would become tomorrow's glass. A driveway that behaves makes a block that doesn't apologize. Curb-protected bike lanes sit inside the same conversation. Car doors that open into the lane push snow like scrapers, creating ridges that later freeze into rails. Signs remind drivers to open doors cautiously and to brush snow toward the street, not into the protected space. Plows assigned to the lane arrive after the street pass, not before, to avoid the rude surprise of a fresh windrow dropped across their work. At intersections, lane doors align with crosswalk doors. Respecting the people who walk and ride through the same winter air storm drains and inlets are where windrows confess whether they were placed with foresight. A narrow, hand-cut trough through the berm at the low point keeps the noon thaw from becoming a moat at 4 o'clock. Where the street crown sends melt to the opposite side, crews add a second trough rather than asking water to negotiate a single choke point. Neighbors adopt a greater peace and learn its mood. This one naps under quilted slush. That one drinks like a happy sink. A minute to wake a drain rescues an hour of chipping later. Enforcement works best when it looks like help with teeth. Tickets do their work. Toes do it faster. But the tone matters. A warning plus a quick widening of a windrow door turns a scoreflaw into a neighbor more reliably than a trawl of summonses. Conversely, a car parked in a curb cut at a clinic earns more than a paper reminder. The tow arrives with the shovel. Feet first is not a slogan. It is a protocol. Be why late afternoon on a well-run block. The geometry tells a calm story. Berms sit low and tidy along tree lawns. Corners show clear doors aligned with stripes. Hydrants wear neat aprons. Bus pads read as stages, not puddles. Drains murmur. Wheelchair users cross straight, not slaloming. Parents push strollers with only the ordinary effort of winter. Cars tuck where requested, and the street looks wider than it did in the morning, not narrower. You realize how much has gone right because you didn't have to notice it to proceed. The lesson of parking, plows, and windrows is that storage and passage can be friends when planned like neighbors. Park with generosity to the corner. Plow with respect for curb cuts. Stack snow where routes and sightlines approve. Cut doors early and often. Open drains like presents. Then the city keeps its promise. Even surrounded by winter's furniture, there is always room for feet.